Today's episode is brought to you by Hustler Made to Work. I'm really honored that they've come on to support the podcast because I've actually been using Hustlers for almost 10 years now myself. They're some of the most reliable machines that I've ever used in my business. More about them later in the podcast. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We've got the best looking Grahame from Better Homes and Gardens, Grahame Rowe. You haven't heard of him, or you might not have heard of him, because he's behind the scenes and he's got a very interesting job. And I wanted to get you on. Grahame, welcome to the podcast.
I might need a minute to get over that intro. Hey, mate, how are you? Thanks for the wrap.
Good. We did it. I did it.
It's funny. Like, there is. Was that, mate?
Sorry, you go.
It is funny where there is two Grahames from Better Homes and Gardens, and that's why the Grahame nicknamed me Craig. Almost 10 years ago. It just because there was some I don't notice it because I'm only talking to him. I'm not talking about myself when I'm saying the word "Hey, Grahame from Better Homes and Gardens." But what happened was there was a couple of instances where I'm calling people to come check out their place for makeover and whatever. Hi, it's Grahame from Better Homes and Gardens. How are you today, Rara? Oh, I'm good, thank you. And I'd turn up and if I can just say they've presented themselves for a celebrity to come over, and then they open the door and they're like, "Oh, hello, how are you?" I'm like, "Oh, you expected." Yeah, no. So when I'm calling people on the phone, it's definitely Grahame Rowe from Better Homes and Gardens. Or if it's people from work or emails, it's Craig. But it's usually just G, but then that confuses him because he's Big G. Then I got Hodgie tagged me Little G. Albone started calling me Baby G. And then it's, you know what? People can work it out for themselves, mate. But, thanks for the wrap.
Well, what I would say is I'm gonna do my best to tell you about your job. And then I want you to tell me everything about it that I don't know. Because what you do, as far as I can tell, is just about everything that is needed behind the scenes. But the main part, as I understand, is finding amazing stories and thinking about things for TV production that is going to be helpful and insightful and entertaining and just all around good value for the viewer. And you also help out on the behind the scenes makeovers, and you also help out with a bunch of other stuff. And it seems like a really diverse, really interesting job. Is that about right?
That's the closest that anyone's ever got to it. Yeah.
Nice.
So well done. Yeah, like that is, it's actually really hard to explain to people what I do. My wife, so I've been in this job, I had 2 years away. This is my 8th year, so over 10 years. And I don't know that my wife would be able to explain to someone exactly what I do because it's so different. And you know what, to be honest with you, it's, the job doesn't really exist anyway. It's not like you look up seek.com and it's like, garden designer for a lifestyle TV show. Like that doesn't exist. Which is essentially what it is. Garden designer for Better Homes and Gardens, lifestyle TV, and it's a full-time position. Whereas our the other shows on TV, our competition, so to say, like they're a run of 3 months or 6 months or whatever. Whereas I'm run of show 12 months. This is my job, so it's not an easy one to describe because it doesn't really exist. But essentially, what I do now, like it changed a little bit since I started years ago. So when I did start years ago, we had Grahame Ross and Jason Hodges. And because of my background, my CV up until then, it allowed me to do both presenters. So Grahame had a full-time person, Hodgie had a full-time person. And because I'd come from complete garden nerd and plant nerd background, pretty good CV that I was really proud of, but I also did some soft landscaping and some hard landscaping. I could do both. So Hodgie was the landscaper, G was the plants, and I could do both. But then over the years, a few people left, and then I became strictly it's called a landscaping presenter because you've got to differentiate between the garden guy, which is G, and Hodgie, which was the landscaper. But it wasn't always that. And so, and essentially now I've just kind of stayed in my lane. But saying that, over the years if whoever, say Hodgie and then Charlie, if they were crossing over with the builder, crossing over with the interior designer, crossing over with another gardener, or it's an all presenter thing, it was always me that ran it. So garden designer, project manager was always part of it, but it's not always a project. So part of it, as you said, like sometimes it's just a story. I used to, because I have to come up with anywhere between 40 and 50 stories a year.
Yeah.
They all have to be different, and then they can't be something that we've done in the last few years, because viewers are loyal, man, and they will pick you out if you've already done that, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I used to do a ton more renovations. I used to do like a renovation every second story, but we're getting older, our budgets are getting smaller, and I just can't physically do a renovation, you know, that many renovations. And it's not like I have a crew. Like if I'm say I'm doing your backyard, depending on what's involved, I will have a crew that I can call on to give me one day for paving or digging out or excavating, one day, because I've had to program it so tightly that it's just a bang, 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 bang. And I might have another crew that I can call for labour, but they're like a hort labourer, where I'm like, mate, that ton of soil from there to there, you know, dig out this lawn or do this, and this. But essentially, other than that, it's me. In between days, it's all me. So yeah, getting back to the initial question, so I come up with content now. I'm strictly just Albo. And so that is, we try to do one big one a month, one smaller one a month, maybe one makeover, maybe a couple of shortcuts, maybe a product placement or just a plant profile or whatever. And that means obviously we've got, you know, a series producer who I bounce this off, because the series producer is basically like the coach. This is how we're going to play over the season. I come up with stories, pitch it to her, why it's good, you know, how we should do it, how we can do it, when we can do it. And one thing everyone needs to know, that producers just, they're not visual people, they're not creative people necessarily like you and me, where they just see from the TV point of view and how do we tell the story, because that people will watch a story. Not if you're just hammering them with information, what's the story? So I'll come up with an idea, say, fiddle leaf figs. We're going to do a story in fiddle leaf figs. And they're going, okay, what's the TV behind that? So I have to go, well, that's obviously interesting because of indoor plants will always be trendy now. But how do I make that interesting to pitch that story to the TV for them to go, yeah, let's do it. So then I have to find a location, have to find a nursery, have to find like a project I'm going to do with it, and then write a brief, which could be anywhere between 5 and 30 A4 pages, just like a simple, like a project in high school, which has the schedule, how we'll do it, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're going to do it. And in the how, I tell a story. So part of my job is like I'm writing, because therefore the producer will cut and paste my brief, put it into a script, and then that's how we'll shoot the day. But then I need to pull that project together, find it all, pull it all together, have my labour, my potting mix, my pots, my plants, my nursery, my person that we're going to interview, Charlie, rah, rah, rah. And that's for an easy one. So that's an easy one to pull together, as opposed to a makeover, which could be 2 to 3 shoot days over 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes what I can do now, I'm getting smarter with it, is, say we're coming to your place, doing your backyard, but you've got say you've got a herb garden out the front. While we're down tools or we're waiting for something, I can actually pitch a story. Hey, let's go to the front and talk about what edibles, what herbs, what veggies that you can cheaply propagate. So it's not really going to cost you anything. And that's like a short story. So that can be filmed and put up my sleeve for a later day where we're like, oh, I've got a few of those. Let's just chuck them in there. Like I'll send Charlie to a beautiful garden. We did one down the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, Red Cow Farm, which is Ali Mentesh has one of the most beautiful gardens that I'm lucky to have been to. So we went there, walking through his garden, but we shot our story by say 12. Went to lunch. After lunch, came back and I said, "Look, he's got 17 different salvias in flower. Let's do a short story on salvias." Finished that. Let's do another short story on clumping grasses because they were all in season. So I got three stories out of one day, and they can be kept up my sleeve. So that's a way to make my job easier, is work smarter, because otherwise I need to find a location, design it with, we just don't go in and just knock a house down and rebuild. A huge element of our job is DIY. So I call our viewers Mark and Debbie. So Mark and Debbie, everyone's house is different. I can walk into someone, look at their front awning that so many people around Australia have it, and go, what could I do to flip this, make this an interesting story, have a really shit hot design, but it also needs to be achievable for the Mark and Debbies to go, oh yeah, I can do that, rather than go in there, spend all this money, going all in, and people are like, well, that's not achievable. So because that is part of our show, that's something that I always have to keep in mind is what's the story, and is it relatable, and can people try to do it at home? So yeah, up between 40 and 50 times a year. So I used to go between a few more presenters, but now strictly just Charlie. And anytime he crosses over, essentially if it's outside and Charlie's involved, like, I'll oversee it. I've got a colleague who has helped me out a couple of times this year just because we got jammed up. But yeah, that's really it. And because Charlie and I work together so well, I kind of do it that if I find this interesting, I know he will, because we like the same stuff. We're similar kinds of guys. And then I'll consult with him about, because he's the face of whatever goes to TV for his stuff. So therefore I'm like, hey man, I was thinking about doing A, B, and C because of the ease of this, because we can use it for here and blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, well, let's do it this way, that way. Okay, done. And just get them done that way. So it's that's essentially it, but it's full on, man. Like, it's a full on job. I love it. I need to be busy. But there comes to a point where there is such a thing as too much. But
if you've been thinking about getting to ride-on mowing this season, or you want to upgrade the ride-on mower you currently have a look at the Hustler range. Like I said before, I've been using them for almost 10 years now, and I can honestly say they are some of the most versatile and reliable machines I have ever used. One of the things about Hustlers is you can use them on overgrown jobs, and I did a lot of those in the early days, but take that same mower and put it on a highly manicured lawn and it still does a really good job. Hustlers have a great range all the way from the 34-inch dash to the Super 104, which is a 104-inch wide mower. Add to that the Raptor range, Fast Track, X1, Super Z, Super S, and the Hustler likely have a mower that suits your budget and your goals. In addition, Hustler have 130 plus dealers across the country, which means, heaven forbid, if something were to go wrong, the help is not far away. And that is crucial if you're relying on that machine for your income. I'm really honored that Hustler have come on board to support the podcast, because it's a brand I truly believe in. If you want to get into ride-on mowing this season, like I said, check out the range. Thank you, Hustler, for support. Hustler, here to work. I've got an interesting question from behind the scenes for you, because I'll set this up a little bit. I've talked about this one before on the podcast. I've written some articles that are my deep dives into different plants, and they've done pretty well on Google. So we get at the moment, 20 to 35,000 reads a month on these articles. Yeah. I think the articles make me look smarter than I am, because I sat down and I researched and I thought about it. And if somebody came up to me in the street, not that anyone would recognize you from an article, they'd be like, oh, tell me this about cordyline. And I'd be second guessing myself, because I half wrote that as a resource to, to learn myself, and I was doing the research and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things I've thought about is, if I was Grahame or Charlie or Jason Hodges back in the day, I personally would be nervous of people coming up to me on the street, because I'd be like, I don't know if I can remember everything I've ever said on television. And But then at the same time, my understanding is these guys are actually really on the ball with what they know. So is there a balance of that? Are these guys really cluing into it, or is there a lot of it is, hey, we need a refresher on this. We might have understood this a year ago, but we need a refresh and prepare.
There's bits of both. Because again, let's just talk about, say, from my experience, Hodgie and Charlie, but then you've got Grahame Ross. Grahame Ross doesn't come into it because he's Grahame Ross. You know, like
yes, I can imagine. Yes,
he doesn't forget. I mean, if he's struggling to recall, it's just because he's got probably 75 different ways to answer that question. You know, like he's very smart. And Hodgie and Charlie are also. However, what can happen with all three of them is if people stop them in the street to ask them about something that they've read or said, we go through 40 or 50 stories a year, you know, and they go, how much was that? Where was I? What was I wearing? What did I say again? Oh, it's that one. I get it. People that know that I'll work on the show, hey, you did this thing the other day, and rah-rah, going, where was I? It was what? You know, like, so I'm like, if you get me back on that page, I'll be able to find the answer for you. But no, so Charlie for sure knows what he's talking about. I would never say it to his face. That's
of course, no.
He and he wouldn't say it back to me. But there's hints there that we both know, like, oh shit, this guy knows his shit. So no, and I think with Hodgie too, like Hodgie wouldn't necessarily be a plantsman, but he's designed and built so many gardens that he'd be able to tell you how to build it. Whereas Charlie wasn't strong on the construction side of things. He's a total like plantsman, plant nerd, garden designer, plant lover. So they are different. So if someone went up to Charlie and said, and neither of them, they wouldn't bother me saying this, but if they said, oh, what's the best waterproofing behind a retainer wall on this slope and on this soil, Charlie would be like, call this number and I'll start the invoice, because that's a lot of work for me to find that right now. That's not, whereas a plant question, you'd nail it. Flip side for Hodgie, I think, where Hodgie's strong point was never really plants, but he could tell you, oh, well, this is the waterproofing that I've used and this and rah, you could just try this and blah, 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 blah. And fortunately, for the 5 years I was with Hodgie and for the, let's just say 5 and 5 with Charlie, besides the time I was away, but because I have fed them those jobs, fed them that information, I can recall it and go, oh, I remember I used this silicon and then this and and you know what, that actually worked and blah, blah, blah. That plant, well, that camellia was actually grown by up at Galston and this and that. So I can actually recall it from the researching part of it and having to do it to a certain point. In no means everything I do, I'm an expert in it for now. Like, I'm an expert in it to get that story done, to make it legit, to make it horticulturally correct and thematically correct, and I'll move on to the next 45, you know. So they are pretty good. And that's the thing, like, look at our show, man. Like, our show's been going, I think, is it 30 years? And you've got a Dr. Harry. Everyone in Australia has grown up with Dr. Harry. Whether you're 90 or 9, everyone knows the guy on TV with the animals. And so then you go in terms of credibility, and then you've got our 2 new chefs, and the old chefs. Every chef that's been on there are qualified, successful chefs. And then you've got bloody Grahame Ross, and, you know, and then you've got you got Doval, the builder. He's a builder presenter, but he's actually a builder. Like, he didn't get to where he was because he just read a couple of Mitre 10 catalogs, you know. And then you got Charlie. So Charlie's been around a long time, man, you know. So it's funny where some shows have not just lifestyle shows, but just shows in general, they have presenters that can present well on TV. They're not necessarily the expert on it, you know. And you can see, like, even over the Olympics I was watching, I'm like, I could be wrong here, but I'm listening to some of the commentating. I'm like, is that Mark Taylor commentating on the diving or something like that? And I'm going, but then again, he had my attention because he knows how to commentate and he knows how to talk. But getting back to our show, they're all experts, you know, like, and it's quite humbling sometimes. You go, oh, that's right, you know your shit, you know, and it's a humbling feeling to know they're like, oh, I've got to tell this guy what to say, and I've got to correct him if he says it wrong. Or, but saying that, that's also a part of the job I love because it means that you don't get to have a day off mentally, especially when you're on a shoot because. You know, like, again, if I was doing your backyard and I got something wrong, I'll come over Tuesday, fix it up. But, you know, once something goes to air, for the first time viewers, it's 1.4 million viewers on Friday night, scrutinising my idea and things Charlie said. And then you've got Facebook, Instagram, reruns. You've got YouTube channel as well. You know, my mum and dad still watch the reruns, and I'll get a text message. Oh, you and Jason did the Glass House today. It's like it was 7 years ago.
17 years ago.
My mum, as sweet as she is, you know, she's 77. I'll just get a text. That was a lovely makeover that you did. I'm like,
yeah.
What are you talking about? You know, so the pressure is so many people are watching and it's forever, and everything that we do goes into a magazine as well, so you can't escape it. You know, it's in every waiting room, and it's still a popular mag. So,
touching on the magazine and TV stuff is what's fascinating to me is that there's these types of shows, as far as I understand, are holding very strong, even though TV in general is starting to suffer.
Yeah.
And if you look back 20 years ago, which my guess would roughly be the height of TV, you start getting your streaming services, YouTube starts getting bigger, there's more and more options, and that's really all it is. There's just more options now, you know, and people can watch more things. But these shows, it's two-sided because I've talked behind the scenes with Dennis Scott about this, right? And their show, Selling Houses Australia, is doing very well for Foxtel. But Foxtel itself is struggling. It's an interesting dynamic because do you feel like you can still make, because of budget constraints and challenges and nervousness around the market, can you still make as good content as you made it back then? Or do you actually think it's forcing you to make it in a different way that actually makes it better content than what you made back then? Maybe
again, both are correct.
Yeah. So tell me about how you work now with, because you've been there for 10 years. How do you work now with maybe a more challenging budget or people under a little bit more stress there compared to before? And how do you think about it?
It makes me try harder, work harder, be sharper. I'm pretty good with relationship building. And, you know, I have some sponsors where they've been around long enough where it makes my job easy because I can pull my next project together driving from here to Sydney just on the phone, call, say, Adbri Masonry, Australian Native Landscapes, Lawn Solutions Australia. They've always had my back. I swear by those three companies and their people, and because they will be like, so what do you need, Gwen? Great. Just make sure Charlie's putting it down. I'll give you some papers. Go into this aggregate. I'll give you some, you know, some mud or whatever you need. So those relationships help with the budget for sure. And they're happy to do that because they get exposure and people go, oh, shit, okay, Charlie was using A&L last night, or what turf did he lay? Oh, let's go get that. But in terms of budget within a corporation, and we are like any free-to-wear like corporation that says they're not feeling it isn't telling the truth, because of course they are. Because everyone's going on streaming, everyone's listening to freaking podcasts, you know, and guilty too, man. Like
not 1.3 million though. I tell you what,
no.
A fraction of that.
But everyone's watching the streamer, and okay. Here's an example. was after Mifka, so let's just say April this year. Bunnings, obviously a major sponsor of Bunnings. So,
Yeah.
so they wanted like an autumn special. And all they wanted was Charlie to go shopping and try and profile some edibles, show some installation of garden edging and fire pit. And there's a couple of other things, just something very general. And then I have to come up with something. And I found a front yard where it was perfect because the couple were lovely. It was different enough where people could relate to, but I knew I had to push myself. And I'm like, right. I know what I can do here. They don't have an entertaining out the backyard. They do want veggies to show their kids where food comes from. They also want an entertaining area, but they also want a yard for their kids. And they want edibles, and there's a few other things. And I'm like, shit, this is interesting. So I came up with a front yard complete makeover with paving that I've never done before in the show. It just looks good in my head. Pretty specky, like it was different, but you need to be different. You can't do the same all the time. People get bored. And even if you're different, it means people love it or people hate it. Hey, they're watching and they're talking about it. And that's good. It gets people thinking about what they do like that. And the entire garden, the whole garden was made up of all but 2 plants out of the entire garden were non-edible or non-usable. And so what I did to them, okay, what we're going to do with the same camera crew, with the same shoot days, which is 2, we're going to shoot the Bunnings story and then chop that up and get the Bunnings story. But while we're there, we're going to shoot the absolute shit out of this paving story and call it Designer Paving 101. And we said to people, okay, how do you pave? Do you know how to pave? Well, this is do you know how deep to pave? Do you know what you're going to put it on? Well, it depends on what you're going to use it for, blah, blah, blah. Here's the top height of the adjacent concrete slab, 40 mil for a paver, compacted this, that level, compacted this, that level. So now you know how to dig it out. Here's how to get it in. Here's how to whack it. Here's how the next one, this is how to screed. This is how to lay. And then the next bits were we blade them on a mortar bed, showed them how to haunch, showed them how to do everything. That's a story called paving. Do you actually know how to pave? I bet you don't. Let's do it. Because we forget that people don't know how to pave. Like, no, well, not everyone does. And the people that do know how to pave aren't going to watch it. But then after that, we shot the shit out of it again, and we got Charlie to do like a walk around of the garden he just planted, because we had screening trees from the street, privacy screens from the neighbor, which was just there. We had the pops of color, ground covers, mid shrubs, sizes. We had the ornamental grass for movement, the lower grasses. We had feature trees and all this stuff, and everything was edible. So he did a walkthrough, and so that is 3 stories out of the 2 standard shoot days. So that makes you sharper and smarter, but it also, another way is to look at something and go, okay, I've got a patio, I've got a small courtyard. I know how I can flip this super cheap with a lick of paint and plonking some furniture. So 2 ends of the scale, go big and get a dozen stories out of it, or just stay small. And sometimes the smaller ones are easy for me because I can detail the Christ out of it. Whereas the bigger ones, you might get more stories out of it. So, and another one this year, sorry for the long answer, but I pitched this front yard to the show, like people who wrote in, and they just had a front yard, standard, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, vinyl clad little cottage. And I pitched to the show to my boss. I said, look, hear me out. Everyone's back aches when I start a sentence with hear me out. 'Cause I've got no idea. And especially my builders, they're like, no, mate. So I said to them, hear me out. Let's try something different, where I said, no one believes, well, I hope, no one believes anymore that a presenter has done this on a Sunday for $2,000. So let's stop that. I've got a front yard where if you let me nail this, like proper nail it, I reckon we can get 6 segments out of it, 3 weeks worth. And they're like, how the fuck are we going to do that? I said, episode 1 is meet and greet and the introduction. And I said, out of all the construction that happens in a massive makeover, ironically, the hardest thing is deciding on what you want it to look like. And she's like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, because everyone has a Pinterest board. Social media has opened up all these styles and influences. And I said, sit them down with a Pinterest board, sit them down with cutouts, sit them down with everything, and go, say, okay, so what do you like? Because people think they like, well, these people who are lovely, they thought they liked Hamptons. I'm like, I bet you don't, because you said Hamptons because you've got white cladding. But of the things that you were showing me, that's not Hamptons. How about this, how about that, how about that? So Charlie sat down for an entire segment and funneled down everything that they like into, well, you like that letterbox, but you've got 17 other letterboxes, but that letterbox goes with this aesthetic, which actually goes with that fence that you like. So now we're just pulling down an aesthetic. And then that was one segment. And people watched it and went, yeah, and that cost me nothing. But then the next segment was, okay, you've got the aesthetic, but rather than go 80 grand at one time, have you got 5 and a couple of mates? Because let's do a front fence. And why you're going to do a front fence is because that's the first thing you see and everybody else sees. So you want to see change for your hard work. So when you're coming home, oh, look at that fence. So we just did a fence. And then, but we slowed down the fence. And we say, this isn't a cheap one. This is hard, but this is how we built it. And now look at it. It's worth it. And then every week, every project we did, because we said to people, just do 5 grand at a time, 10 grand at a time, whatever. Take 18 months to do it. So long as it's a project pulled out of your overall aesthetic. And the finished product was like, oh my God, look at that. And it's the type of finished product that people are watching on their reels and go, oh my God. But yeah, they're not realizing that's probably 70 or 80 or 120 grand. Whereas we go, take 2 years to do it. You've got your aesthetic, just do the fence. Okay, you got $20? All right, letterbox, letterbox aren't $20. But and slowly
they are if you steal them. I mean, you can get a little bit less.
Steal them, yeah. Well, $20 for a bag of rock and stand it back up. So and that was yeah. So, and thanks to our partners and sponsors and friends, that didn't cost us a whole lot, but we got 6 segments out of it. So, I mean, I can't do that all year because that nearly broke me physically. But that's another way, is just being smart about it. And I got some really good feedback from that one when it finally went to air. All people saying, thank you for being real and saying it cost us this and this is how long we did it. And we slowed it down. And a few people from the industry went, thanks, man. Thanks for saying that it took this long and it took this much and it looks shit hot, So, because that's the thing, people, people no longer believe that they did this overnight, and they watch some, I'm not going to mention any other TV shows, but they watch a bathroom and a kitchen be built in the space of 30 minutes on an episode. Didn't take a weekend, man. If you're finishing a bathroom over a weekend, I'll be selling that house. So that waterproofing needs how long, that screen needs to go off, this needs to go off, that needs to go off, So I said to him, let's cut the bullshit and slow it down, slow us down, save us money, get some, good TV out of it and it works. So that's
also it's a skill of the operator as well. Because I believe that somebody who is very experienced at landscaping could do an entire front, a small front, with 1 or 2 mates on their own, because they're going to go, I'm really good on a mini excavator and I'm really good on a Kanga, and I already know exactly what I want and I know how to organize it. And I'm getting my post hole or my big auger attachment off on the Kanga, and bam, 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 plants are in, soils in, done. Lay it on top. I already know how to do irrigation. So someone who's really good could smash it in a weekend. But the homeowner is going to go, okay, how do I glue 2 pieces of PVC together? And do I need thread tape on this or not? And they're going to be on YouTube, looking up the previous episode of Better Homes and Gardens. That was, that will take them 7, 8 times as long just to do the same thing because they've never done it before. And that's the thing that gets people is they go, oh, yeah, sure. Okay, maybe you did it in a weekend, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
So.
And it is so people who are naturally DIY, doing anything yourself is terrifying for them. Like, it really is. It's crippling. Like, I see people almost like a mini panic attack because they're like, yeah, but I don't know what drill bit to use. That's like, that's cool. Neither did I a few years ago. Neither did I.
Yeah.
But if everyone did know what I knew, I wouldn't have a job, you know? So it's terrifying for people even to go, so do I put WeMat down and then Pebbles and then this? I'm like, if you do any of that, we're no longer friends. But like, you know, it's terrifying for them. Like, and anyone that, man, the amount of free consults over text I've given, not that I want to, I don't want to at all. But I get the panic. People are terrified of it. And that's where slowing it down can make sense, or having references that they can go look up. But it is, it can be scary. But you know what? Like, I think gardening, I think I said this to you on one of your posts, gardening and painting, or, you know, soft landscaping and painting are the only two trades that anyone will try themselves to save money. Because they're always the thing that's left to the last minute. Like, you'll watch a $3 million development, and at the end they're spending $1,500 on the garden, and it makes me sick.
Lucky.
It makes me sick. But people also will have a go at it themselves, and I guess the reason for the terror is because they've failed so many times by buying the wrong plants or buying this, or but everyone will try and paint their house inside and out, and they'll try and do their own gardens. At least with gardens, you can replace it's expensive, but that's a lot of sanding for the walls, you know, if you get that wrong. But look, I don't blame them because everything is expensive, you know. We get that.
Well, that Ficus lyrata you've got next to you is a great example of that, because when they were really, really hot property, and they still are, but like when there was the craze for them and everyone was paying, you know, hundreds of dollars for a medium-sized plant, and then just being like, I saw it on Instagram in a house, which means I should be able to put it in my house. There's no difference between the houses, and they put it right next to an aircon unit in full shade, and it gets some indirect light from a very weak LED light in the corner, and then 5 weeks later it's losing leaves, and people are like, I don't know what I did wrong. It's like, well, I feel sorry for you, because
and look, not to get too preachy on it either. Like, because I used to do a long time ago, I used to do indoor plant workshops and pop-up shops, and I'm not saying anything about myself. I just know it was before it took off, because after it took off, there were so many Instagram experts that I just went, right, I'm out. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to argue with it. Cool, good power to you, but I don't need to anymore. But in my workshops, I used to teach people how to make their own potting mixes out of these products, and basically plant health, indoor plant health. And one of the opening lines was, contrary to everything that's gotten you into loving these plants evolved outside, not in a loft in Brooklyn. It looks good in a loft in Brooklyn, looks shit hot, and that's why it made you buy one. But your villa in Bankstown doesn't have the same light. And I say to people as well that there. I mean, we've had that for years, but and I say this to people, like, you're buying this from a nursery where it first came in as tissue culture or somewhere else in the most imperfect environment to explode quickly, so they can turn it over quickly. Sold for a couple of bucks to a wholesale nursery. They've got it for 6 months max. So and under the perfect light, perfect fertilizer, perfect water, perfect heat, perfect everything. Get them as big as they can. Sell it to Bunnings when it's looking shit hot. Bunnings are like, these are looking shit hot. This is how much they are. I hope they're all sold, because if it's here for long for 2 weeks, they're all dead. And then you get them. And I did a story about this with Charlie this year. You get them going, oh my God, look how healthy that is. Stick them in a pot with the wrong soil and the wrong light, and you're like, that was $150 and it's now dead. It's like, And it happens more so with outdoor plants, because you're sticking them in the worst soil ever with the wrong techniques, in the wrong soil and the wrong light and everything else. But stuff like this, I mean, they're still expensive, but like It's a lot of money, man.
Recently, I made a small business course called the Aussie Green Biz Mastery Course. It's for people who are starting out in the industry or who have been in maybe for a year or two, and they're really good at the gardening side, but they struggle on the business side. There's 47 lessons that cover everything from how to get great clients to how to work out your pricing, how to work out a system that's efficient, and ultimately set up a business that is going to be successful. Essentially, what I did is I thought about myself as a 19-year-old. And I thought, looking back when I started my business, what would I tell my 19-year-old self to help him avoid all the stupid mistakes that I ended up making and have success in a much quicker time frame? If you know somebody who wants to start a business, it's made for them. If you're struggling in your business, you love the industry, and you want a successful business, this is made for you. We recently added the option as well to break down the payment over 4 months, so it makes it a little bit more affordable for those who are just starting out. The course is called the Aussie Green Biz Mastery Course. For more information, follow the link. And they're hard to get back. But I consider myself a world-class expert on plants, indoor plants, in one specific aspect of them, which is the ability to kill dozens of them annually. Yeah, world-class expert on that, I'll go toe-to-toe with anybody else on that. So, but other than that, I've got a few things to learn,
Yeah. Was that one of your articles about?
Actually, I'm scared to write an article on something like Monstera, because I've got Monsteras. I've got pretty. I can't move. I put the brakes on my thing, but actually, I can't. I'll move my table for you. There's a few indoor plants in here.
Yeah, no, it's a nice background, man. I've been distracted by it.
There we go. There's my big Monstera on the wall. But and I've got a lot of Epipremnum,
Yep.
But this warehouse is a cheat code because the what do you call it? The environment is just so much. There's what do you call it? The plastic, see-through, transparent roofing, which just makes it like it's almost perfect lighting. It's almost what would be on a forest floor. Yeah. So then you go, I can't. Yes, they grow and they do pretty well. I still managed to kill a lot of them. I've got some spider mite. I've got some bug issues, and I'm like, I don't know. I've got to deal with them, and it's not. Anyways, what I'm getting at is, yes, they grow successfully, but this is okay. Here's a whole rabbit hole we can go down. Some people on Instagram have incredibly good climate, soil, all that sort of stuff. They get an amazing result, and they post those photos. Fantastic. I'm all for it. Love it. And then they go, I'm an expert. Or they try and give advice. And you're like, oh, man, it's like, give me a lawn expert who did it in an incredibly hard scenario. Like a lot of wear and tear on, because it's school kids, low budget, water restrictions. Let me listen to that guy. And the lawn is 8 out of 10. You kept that 8 out of 10. I'm impressed. Well done. Budget, all that sort of stuff. Rather than someone who's got a home lawn, they water it, every single day. They're putting all this product out. The dollars per square meter on product is through the roof, and it's Instagrammable. I love that you've done an amazing job with it, but there's levels to this game. So I feel like for me, I don't want to write the article because I don't really know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I'd be like, look, I've got some nice Monsteras that are doing pretty well, but also it's like they're just doing well because they're in the right place, So
yeah, and those internet experts, again, power to them. Don't really like having conversations with them, and it's just because we learnt differently, But it's just like when you see your mates go away on holidays, and they're only posting the perfect sunset with their chinking glasses of plonk, right? They're not showing you the kids fighting and one of them getting diarrhea and the rain, and so I think. Those photos of the perfect indoor plants as well is specifically to the time or that week of the year where everything's looking shit hot as well.
Yeah.
It just is. That's just the reality. Is that like even I see some people that are living in their own urban jungle, and it's like it looks shit hot, but that's a lot of work. And I get that people fall in love with it and do it, and I feel bad that it fails because It is a lot of work, and indoor plants, like it can be tough. I only grow indoor plants here. I only grow the indoor plants that want to be here. Same with outside. Like my garden, if there's a plant that's sooking, I don't want you in my garden. Like, because there's plants that are like, yeah, I'm happy with the soil, happy with the water, happy with the light. We're good. Anything that needs attention, I'm like, you're gone, mate. So same with indoor plants.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Indoor plants, like, well, because it's very sustainable to only grow plants that are going to be they're only going to tolerate all those conditions. You know,
Exactly.
if I've planted something and all of a sudden it's getting every pest, every fungal disease, or it's too dry to this, I'm like, well, I made the wrong decision there because selfishly I wanted this plant in my garden. And look, I've had to tear out some of my favorite plants to go wrong spot. You know, that's the next house, or that's in my retirement village. So I only grow what wants to be there, honestly. And indoor plants, got some mates that are full on indoor plant nerds. Power to them, man. Love it. Love their passion, you know. And one guy, Scotty Green Thumbs, Dr. Green Thumbs. If you want to talk to a nerd, man, talk to Scotty Green Thumbs. You'll get this by the first conversation. He got into all of it via hydro. And so he learnt soils, and like he could talk to you all day just on micronutrients for what aggregate in the soil, you know. Brilliant. Yeah. And he sells everything for hydro growers and indoor plant growers. And through him, I met a few people, and I go to their like warehouse like yours, and they go, come into this secret room. And it's like walking into a NASA camp where it's like zip, zip, zip. They've got a humidifier and, you know, all this light and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Wouldn't it be better just outside? You know, like, wouldn't it be better just under an awning? Like, I get that it's like parked under a mezzanine up the back, you know, and it's all zipped up like NASA foil. And inside they've got fans, they've got humidifiers, they've got their fluttering watering trays that flood, then recede, and flood, then recede. And then this light comes on and it's all on a timer. I'm like, no. Yeah. Put them on the patio, bro. And if they struggle, hey, deal with it, you know, like it's because that's more work than a childcare centre. And it's just for like 5 plants. But look, hey, but saying that, I can't relate to it. That's only my opinion. I can't really relate to it because I'm more of a traditionalist that way. But I love their passion. And nothing that they're saying is wrong. It's just like I look at it and go, that's a lot of work, bro. But I love that they love it.
Well, the easiest way to make an indoor plant thrive is just literally do what they do at the wholesale nursery and get some cheap shade cloth and make some sort of frame about it and throw it on the shade cloth. And, you know, if it gets too hot, you know, maybe you'll have some trouble and maybe you just need to water it a little bit more. But some sort of automatic irrigation system under shade cloth and it'll thrive. And if you're like, it doesn't work that way, it's like, just go to your wholesale nursery and just see just about every single plant that has grown in. It's just like, okay, it's a part shade or a full shade or whatever. It's like they just adjust where it's located in that area. It's like, it's that simple, you know, and they do. I think they know what they're talking about. So, you know,
and it's don't try and, you know, don't go to a 5-star restaurant and then try and replicate it in your shitty camp kitchen. You know, like it's not going to happen. Like, but if you can go to a nursery and go, like we did a story this year with Charlie and I said, and the pitch to the producer was, I'm gonna earmark an indoor plant thing because I'm looking at it. It's right behind you, so I'll come back to that. But the story was, I pitched to the boss and I said, I have no doubt that 70 to 80% of the money spent in Bunnings nurseries is on the wrong plant. And she's like, yeah. And I'm going, let's do a story on that. She's like, how the fuck are you going to tell that story? And I said, well, saying that, you know, I said, and the story that I pitched was, everyone has the trouble spot in their yard. Everyone has that spot, you know, Barry, we've got a long weekend. We're going to tackle that trouble spot. And then off they go, you know, pack up the Maltese Terrier under their arm and go to like Bunnings of a Saturday morning, pick up a coffee and a snagging bread, and then they're kind of amazed by everything that's looking great, and they come home with a hanging plant, a flowering lavender, a fruit tree, and an indoor fucking palm, and they put them because it looked pretty, and they plant them in the garden, and they go, "Why did that die, Barry? What did you do wrong?" It's like,
yeah, Barry,
you did everything wrong. Poor Baz. So I said to them, so how we started it was essentially that. But what's the trouble spot? Why is it a trouble spot? Like, what's happened here before? Is it the wrong plant selection? Because plants either side of it are growing. So what's wrong? Maybe you've just put the wrong plants in there. Look at the soil. What are we dealing with here? Look at the exposure. Is it a rockery? Is it under a tree? Are you coastal? What's the sun like in the afternoon? Test your soil. Then, with a list, take it to Bunnings. And then if you've got a rockery, go to the fucking rockery section. Don't go to the plant selection.
I can't understand how that would make sense. This seems like just radical out there information. This is misinformation that YouTube's going to get us canned for, mate. I don't know why you're telling me this random stuff.
I apologize. But, and in this case, we had a rockery. So it's raised, well draining, but tough. Shallow soil, full sun. So he said, go to the rockery section and go to the native section, whatever, because next to it was a Westringia. That side of it was Loropetalum, or like two pretty tough plants. All right, go to that section in the nursery. And because you're guaranteed in that section, you flip the tab over, it's got the same light requirements. The tolerances may vary. It's got the same water. It's got everything very, very similar. And then I said, so you're in the right section. And I got Charlie to pull out a trolley and go, pull together what looks good together. I go, so you've got a Westringia here and you've got a Loropetalum. Well, would some grasses look pretty good there? Let's add some grasses and let's go, oh, that actually looks pretty good. Put that in front. No, that looks shit. That looks good. So had a couple of trolleys or one trolley or on the pathway, set up the group of plants that looks good together, picked from the area that have the same requirements. And if you like the look of it, done, because it's all going to have the same water, maintenance, and everything else requirements. And then so piss off home, plant it in, but then teach people the weaning off process. It's like weaning off your kids after Easter, and all they've done is chocolate. So they've come from a nursery where they're watered every single day in the perfect requirements, coming from the wholesaler, coming from the pre-wholesaler, with all the perfect requirements. Then you're going to put them in your shit dirt with the wrong sunlight and go away for the weekend. So here's how to wean it off those conditions into your new conditions. And that is a lot of information, but if you were to bullet point that, you're like, Jesus Christ, that just makes sense. If you've got a shady area, go to the shade section. If it's in a shrub or a hedge or a border, then you can vary, but you can just look around, read the tags, and just buy stuff from, other than that, or you're trying to spend all this money making your home conditions replicate the nursery against its will, like that's not going to win because you're in full sun, you're on shit soil, and you need the beach. It's not going to be an XYZ garden. But getting back to that indoor plant thing, me only growing what will grow. It's funny, like the some of the things that the lengths that people go to. Just there is a variegated monstera that I've propagated. So it's got similar light to this. So that's north there. It's on my TV cabinet. I've got a plastic bottle of, mineral water, cut the top off, stuck it in, filled it with the fired clay balls and water. And it's like the healthiest variegated monstera I've ever seen. And it's just sitting right there. It's like, I just put it in the right light, man.
Yeah.
But
that's the hot tip with monstera. Put it in the right light and then put some water on it, and mate, you're 75 to 90% of the way there. And every now and then, maybe you might need to do something else, but very rarely. I want to talk to you about this concept we're talking about here of right plant, right spot. Okay, I believe and I'm no plant nerd, right? So there might be more than this, but I have a never dying love for liriope, which I think is one of the most underrated plants out there, because at least in Western Australia, it can kind of do everything. It couldn't do like full shade, but I've got some growing in the warehouse. It's been there for years. It doesn't grow very fast. It doesn't have enough sunlight to grow fast, but it survives. I've had some in gardens where they've just no water for a long time. It came back. It can do, the soccer ball getting kicked into it. It can do a lot of other things, right? And I just think, yes, it can handle abuse. It's not the prettiest thing you've ever seen, but it's also not the ugliest. And you don't really have to prune it if you put it in the right spot, if it's not overhanging in the area. So that's my go-to. I've said that many times on the podcast. Are there other go-to plants which, all things being reasonable, can pretty much handle the abuse, can pretty much handle just about any spots? What are the ones that come to mind when you're thinking about that?
Liriope's a banger because my favourite plants are the plants that are just happy to get a jersey, man. I don't care if I'm on the bench. Happy to be in the chat,
Yes.
Chuck me over there, man. I've got you. So liriope for sure. And, like getting back to, because this will come into it, the ugly plants, or the plants that people are just so sick of. The reason they're sick of them because they've seen them in the wrong spot, or they haven't seen them in the right setting, I should say. Whereas, like there are the council median strip and roundabout plants that are horrible, right? Because they're planted en masse and left there for 6 years. But if you put them in a nice garden and just in a clump here and there, mate, they've got your back, and they will be the backbone. Things like Agapanthus, Dietes. I love Aggies. I don't like them after they're flowering and they're all got deadheads. But so, you see like a roundabout or nature strip, not nature strip, but median strip or council strip or whatever, and there's nothing but Aggies, and people go, geez, I hate Aggies. I'm like, why, man? They would grow upside down under concrete and still flower by Christmas for you. But in a massive border along a fence or along a median strip, that's a little bit uninventive. But if you've got a nice border and you've got 3 clumps of them, man, they're going to be the heroes. Same as Dietes, and some nicer Dietes. Dianella, I love a good Dianella, Aussie native.
Yep.
Use one called Taz Red in a job I have just done, and my next one I'm planting out Taz Red because it's a medium foliage. It looks like a small phormium, which is another one, the flax. But it's like a glaucous-y leaf. The new growth gets a tinge of red. I hate tinges of red on plants. That's just my thing. But it's a nice leaf, and it's got you, man. It'll fill a gap. It's got you. So Dianellas, flax, again, I mentioned. Getting into shrubs, Raphaeolepis, Oriental Pearl. One of my top faves. I've got them in my garden because, again, it's like, cheers, bro. See when you want to water me in May. You're like, or whatever. It's currently flowering now. Like
they're amazing when they flower.
It does what it says on the tin, man. It's don't necessarily have to worry about pruning it. It's a big green bun. It'll flower in spring. And when it's not flowering, it's got a beautiful, like mousy, dark green, velvety looking leaf. That's it. You can prune it, can get big, like after several years. I just revisited a garden that I did with Hodgie 7 years ago. And that's probably like they're a metre tall now. They're getting too big. I'm like, yeah, but you haven't cut it for 7 years. So what's better here? Westringia fruticosa, I love. New one coming out of Western Australia, I think it's called, is it Grey Box or Aussie Box? It's like it's really waxy, grey look, tight, formed ball, really nice and grey, glaucous grey, olivey grey, covered in white flowers currently in my pool area. They're good ones. I'm just trying to think of what else there are. Trees, obviously your lily pillies. Over here, water houses. Eliocarpus, things like that. Like there's a bunch. Once you start talking about this, that you'd be like, oh man, I've got 20 plants that can't die in my garden.
Yeah.
Like my garden at home. So I've been where we are 5 years, and I went straight to cacti and planted everything 5 years ago. So now some of my cacti are trees, but I'm like, I did that on purpose to see what worked and what didn't work, what needed more water. You need more water and whatever, you're out. So and left all the big ones and all the columella and the branching cacti. And there was underplanted with grasses, all native grasses and some carex like kiwi, like from New Zealand, some carex from kiwi. And now I've thinned it all out and I'm going for Raphaelepis, the buns. Westringia smoky, which is a fave. There's the variegated Westringia. Backed by Eleagnis macrophylla. That's a good one. Even Strobilanthes, Gossypinus. So I've gone for a really coloured palette of tough plants, like buns, smaller buns, ground covers. Myoporums. Myoporums will never fail. Leucophyta won't seem to fail over here. But some Carokias, which are tough. They haven't gone through the summer yet, but even some herbs, man. Like chuck in some rosemary, chuck in some ground cover rosemary.
Just don't put any mint. You can put it in if you want, but
yeah. Then you got a job.
It's like the Hotel California. Once you check in, you can never leave.
Never leave. But some of my ground covers are thyme, rosemary, and sage.
Yeah,
because I can go and pick it, and it'll just grow in the hot spot with the same requirements as Restringia, Corias, and agaves. So they're all kind of growing together. But there's a bunch of foolproof plants around, and the variety is only getting bigger and bigger. Like even I called through a native nursery yesterday. Like I bypassed natives because when I finished studying. 24 years ago, I finished my apprenticeship. The native gardens that were around were Callistemon, Grevillea Robin Gordons, and some other, ground covers that you're very, very limited. But now you can, the amount of like tough natives that are around, you can have the schmickest, high profile garden just out of natives, and you can do that again with tough plants, natives and exotics. So the amount of plants available to you now that you can have kind of any theme. So it's a good time. But
I think I would take a garden that was, say you had 100 plants in it, give me 97 of those varieties and 3 maybe focal piece rock stars that maybe they need the work, but at least I only have to work on you. So like maybe I want a veggie patch, and veggie patches are a lot more work than the rest of it, or maybe I want, a couple of like buxus balls that I'm going to maintain, to the most perfect thing, or some roses or whatever. Or I want my lawn to be striped up like the MCG. And so I'm going to put effort into one of those things, and the rest of it, just give me some clumps, put down some nice mulch wherever there's a little gap, and then, make sure the sprinklers are working. And then that to me is my perfect garden.
I think that can either come with age or experience, because our garden before I left here, I'll have to send you some photos. Our previous house, so again, we were there for 13 years, up until 5.5, 6 years ago. It was, for all intents and purposes, a rambling Hawaiian bungalow. And it was an organized chaos. It was planted to look like it was wild and rambling. And I had every color you can think of, and very, very obviously very tropical, but a lot of mixed stuff in there. Very eclectic, but it took a little bit of my work, even though it was in the right climate because we were slightly closer to the coast. So the temperature was good. Water needed a little bit more, but still was like, oh shit, that's getting too big for there. That's getting too big. Like it was overplanted to the shit. Whereas this time, okay, my kids are older, need me a bit more. Well, I mean, not that I ignored them back then. 13 and 11, they've got more sports, or I'm doing this with them, doing that with them. I'm busier now just with work and life. So this garden is a setting rather than a working garden, if that makes sense. So although I've planted all these mounds that will need hedging, clipping a couple of times a year, nothing else does. And it is a setting. Again, I'll show you stuff as well. I'll show you some photos. But, to look, so I'm on 645 block and the house is closer to the front, so the backyard's pretty big. But I bought this house going, I know what I'm going to do here. I'm not going to be as busy as I was. There's massive pergola next to a pool, and then there's still a weed area which would have been out of the way, so I made all of that a garden, and it's a fire pit area, but then I've still got enough lawn for, a little soccer pitch and hedges and lawn and all this stuff. But I don't really have to work it. It's like a landscape setting where, if you came here, you're like, oh shit, how good is this space? So last time I used to work the garden. This time round, this garden is one of those ones for the feels when you're sitting in it, just sitting there going, oh yeah, this is great. And but honestly, I think that's an age thing, because now I'm like, I've got time to fucking maintain because my job is to maintain. But also it's learned from experience, because I just chased my ass at the last house as well. And then therefore, just concentrate on your lawn. Just do your lawn, because the garden's fine.
Yeah, I want to change subjects a little bit on this, because I can't let you off the podcast without asking this question, so I don't want to forget it.
I'm here for it.
It used to really annoy me. This is something that used to really annoy me. I've actually changed my mind on this, but I used to watch Hodgie back in the day, right? Yeah. So. And this is before and what would be happening is it's probably you or somebody else, or whoever it was, and obviously
I like where this is going.
The thing that really annoyed me, okay, and we're far enough in the brands, I'm not going to find this, all right, but it would annoy me that you guys would be doing something, and then the description, that the shot that is like you're screwing in the piece of wood, is with what I know is the lowest price point drill driver possible. And I know for a fact that any landscaper who is using a drill driver is not worth their salt. They're using an impact driver, and it's probably a different brand, and it used to really grind my gears. And then one day I had a thought, I was like, hold on a second. But are they trying to be true to what they actually used? Right? Or are they trying to tell the point that you could actually do this with the $70 drill driver? And I calmed down a little bit, but it still kind of grinds my gears when I see the close-up shot, and in the background there's a different battery. I can see it. I can see there's a different one there. It's a different color. Tell me all about that.
Let's leave green Bosch out of this, all right?
I wasn't going to say it. You said it, all right?
Well, that comes into the DIY of the program, because so for sure, if it was in the in-between days to get it done, we're using blue Bosch. Just bang, 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 bang. These days it's loosened up. I don't think I'll get in trouble for this because the relationship's changed. But this time round, I mean, we've also got blue Bosch, but someone might have a DeWalt or something. But for all intents and purposes, back then, again, it has changed a bit, and I respect the ruling back then, because they were like, green is DIY, blue is pro. And although the pros in the background are using blue, and it was Hodgie back then, because Charlie has never had to use green Bosch. The idea was the power in the green, a DIYer, Nana can put a little drive a little screw in, and if it grabs, it's not going to break a wrist. It was just the power, honestly. And even though to get stuff done, we were using a more powerful one, but like I got to stress this point where because Bunnings tell me this, that whatever you do last night, they're buying Saturday morning. So So the pros in the background, not pros, just construction guys, me, everybody else, to get the job done quickly, we would have, one blue Bosch with the pilot hole, one with the clearance hole, one with the driver, just to go bang, 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 because we have to build this retaining wall today. But for Hodgie, he would have to use the green because, again, my point is, but Bunnings say to us, whatever you use and whatever you do, they shop for Saturday morning. And so the brief I said to you could be between 5 pages and 25 pages. That also gets sent to Bunnings because they go, air date this Friday. Shit, we better stock up 2 weeks in advance of that, whatever it is, that paver, that pot. So they read it. And sometimes the items just get sent to them. Sometimes my entire brief gets sent to them and they read what I say. And so if I'm leaving Easter eggs in all through my brief to see who's reading, I've had someone one day pull up something that I said, I'm like, oh yeah. That was just to see if Charlie was read it, and he does. So if we said, okay, say if we got Charlie on a 9-inch grinder, no way, because people would go and buy a 9-inch grinder. They would. So for Hodgie back then, though, it would be showing that he was doing a retainer wall with the green Bosch, for sure. And mainly Tara would also then, Tara Dennis. And I think only the chippy, I think Doval was wearing blue because he was a chippy. But because if we said to people, use A, B, and C, they do it. I'm not saying every viewer does it, but whatever percentage goes, oh, we're doing that tomorrow, they would go and do it. So to get Nana or just to get, hey, I don't know, my sister on a blue Bosch, just take it to emergency now because that's going to rip her shoulder out if that grabs. And so you are right. And we had an affiliation, obviously, with certain brands that we use. But the green. So we'd have a kit of green and a kit of blue. So there you go.
Well, the thing that annoyed me. Well, I should say this first before I get any further in. I do have a green Bosch. What's it called? A saw. I can't remember the name of the.
Like the Circ saw?
Yeah, circular saw. It's not battery. It's plug-in. I think I bought that like 7 or 8 years ago. I remember it was $99, and it just won't die. And literally, like a couple of weeks ago, I had to do some fabrication on my trailer, and I had to cut a long sheet of metal, right? And I know you can get these saw bits. So I got one of those Diablo ferrous metal saw bits, and I did some YouTubing, and people are like, yes, you can use a circular saw. And I was like, man, cheap $99 circular saw. The Diablo bit was like $60 and the saw was like $90.
Yeah.
I'm just going to try. That's all I've got. I'm just going to try. And it did fine. I just went slow. And I was like, do you know what? And that's the thing. Like, I've got some home grade stuff that I use every now and then. And you're like, it does fine. Like, it's maybe if I threw it around, maybe it wouldn't handle it. Maybe if it's in the back of the ute, maybe it can't. Maybe it's not quite as water resistance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's because it was on a cord as well. Like the power ones, like, the powered impact drills that are green, they're fine. I mean, look, someone who's like full-on massive building crews and all that stuff, each to their own. It's DeWalt, Milwaukee, or whatever it is. But some of the green stuff on like power, not a battery. They did the job. It was just like the drivers on battery putting, putting home like a 200mm bugle into a retaining wall. It's like, look, you guys might, go to lunch. I'll do this. But, Hodgie also, again, he wouldn't mind me saying this, he would almost refuse to do pilot holes sometimes, not all the time. But, because we've got builders, we're like, do this. And he'd be like, nah, I'll do it my own way. So we'd be like, green driver. The clearance hole. He's like, nah, this is fine. It's like, bro.
read the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy and then he's finished.
Yeah. But that's why, man. So you are right.
But no, I did change. It did used to really annoy me because I was like, this is misrepresenting. But I was like, no, it's just slower. It's not that you can't do the job.
Yeah.
But especially like when someone's using a drill driver to put in a screw, I'm like, man, like impact drivers is just so much nicer. And you don't strip it as much,
Yeah, no, for sure. But that's where we are unlike any other lifestyle program where, like, so obviously you got your Gardening Australia that they don't necessarily use power tools or too many because that's not necessarily what they're into.
They do.
Then you've got things like The Block where the only presenters are the hosts. The contestants, it's like a grey area. The contestants can but don't necessarily doing the work. It's run by crews. So they don't have to go, we better be careful what we're showing necessarily with what tools they're using or whatever, because there's no DIY element as such other than, beautiful, inspirational ideas. And then, and a couple of the others, they don't necessarily have to do it either, unless they've got an affiliation with tool sponsorship or whatever. But we are so heavily DIY, and we have to be mindful of what we say for viewers to do. And it's not necessarily in saying, it's just they're watching what we're doing. And they go, well, he used, this. We can go do it. And then you get an email from, Auntie Sue going, I'll put that grinder through my ankle, I'm suing you. It's like, wow.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thanks. Let's avoid that next time.
Yeah.
But talking about other shows, I am going to get up. We did a story the other day for people to ask questions. So we'll change the flow of this podcast because people send in quite a few questions. Just warning people, most of these are silly, which is fun, to be honest. Now, you and Dennis Scott from Selling Houses Australia, he did say that he does like you, but he jokingly asked, does he know what EA... He clarified it because I didn't get the joke and I was actually quite concerned. But because he asked, ask him if he knows what EAD means. So, thanks, Dennis.
Yes, I do. I'm just going to say that.
But there was a question. Let me find. Okay.
From his posts, or my posts, if you go back, one of us is commenting EAD on each other's.
Right. Yeah. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
But talking about different TV shows, we got this comment from Yaks Mowing, who was a previous guest on the podcast, and he has said, is there any gang fight situations between them and rival gardening shows? I think he means like, Anchorman, when all the TV presenters just come out and they're randomly pulling out swords and tridents and has that ever happened between, like, you just rock up and Costa's in the corner and just it has to go down?
Yeah, we whip out the secateurs out of the pouch and we try and prune each other's beards.
I think you got more to cut off on his. Easier target.
I would win because I'd just grab him and overpower him. No, Costa's a legend. I wish I had some good stories on that, but no. So I know a few of the Gardening Australia crew, like my mates. Like I knew Costa. I've known Costa for 7 or 8 years, and met him very randomly at a wholesale nursery, and he gave me the biggest pep talk that I didn't know I needed at the time for someone who just met him and who is a competitor, right? He could have just barred me, but he's not that person at all. He's got time for literally everyone. So known him for a while, but Clarence and Tammy that are on the show are friends of mine for years. Tammy used to work for Better Homes Mag. So she's like, love Tam. And Clarence and I used to work together at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Sydney. So he was the Indigenous Education Officer. I can't remember the exact title, but we had like a community greening and education area, and obviously a massive Indigenous area and focus back then. And he came on as a perfect guy for it. And I don't know if he still has anything to do with it, but he does that outside of Gardening Australia, because he's probably like 15 minutes from me as well, so not rare to see him. And as the block, I don't know anyone from the block because they do change. I do know that obviously your Joels, and I think there's a few crews. I don't want to name them in case I get it wrong, but I know a few crews that I know down in Melbourne have done some of the block builds. And then a few of the regulars that Charlie worked with on Selling Houses Australia, he's still mates with, and I've only met a couple of them as well. But the mutual mate between me and Dennis, Shannon Atkins, he owns the Landsculpt Group, based in the Blue Mountains. He's one of the best landscapers I've ever met. He's one of the best operators of machinery and just operators of a business that I've ever met. And I met him through an old construction manager. Not old. He was with the show for a couple of years, and he was a builder for a company that did all the selling houses. I think selling houses. What was the other one that Adam was on? House Rules. Rules and a few others, and he brought him on board. I'm like, because to work on TV is forget everything you know about running your business. Forget about it. It's good that you know it, but you're on a film site. Everything's different. Like it's hard to explain, but this guy got it, and so he's obviously now with Selling Houses and gets along with Dennis, and unfortunately, we're all kind of mates. And you know why we're all kind of mates is because of how difficult the job is to do. Yeah. We just kind of just really respect each other. So if I see anyone from Gardening Australia the different shows you're going to see them in different environments. I'm not going to see the people from Selling Houses Australia necessarily at a plant show, but I'll see all the Gardening Australia guys there. That it's like a reunion. It's like, hey, how's this weird thing we're involved in, and it's more so for them because they're on TV, I'm not. Unfortunately, we're all good mates.
Yeah, right.
And
I was hoping for some goss. I was hoping for some inside scoops there. That was going to go viral. I was going to get more views, but thanks for letting me down, I guess, and being friendly and nice.
Thing about Dennis. No, I've got nothing on him. For more reports, he rips in.
No, he's good fun.
Ex-football player. He's a nice guy.
He is. Now, I do want to ask you this question, though, right? Let's say we're doing a WWE style fight, right? And between the different shows, right?
I'm not fighting Dennis. He's bigger than me.
Oh, I was going to say, all right. So he's on one of the other sides, but the problem is he's only got either Andrew or Wendy with him, right? Okay, well maybe some behind the scenes crew. So he's got a challenge there. He's got to take on everybody himself by the looks of it. Yeah. But my thought is, who are you tag teaming with, right? So you're in. You got to take someone from Better Homes and Gardens, because my gut feeling is I would take probably Jason, but he's not part of the crew anymore. So who have you got from Better Homes and Gardens tag teaming?
I'm going to surprise you. You. So I'm up against Dennis and say Wendy.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
I'm going to surprise you. I hope I don't get shit for this, but Joe Griggs.
Really? Okay. No, all right.
I'm 6'2". She's like. My height, I guess, like 6. But man, she's an ex-Olympic and Commonwealth swimmer. Like she would.
Fight. You reckon she's got the mentality to win? She's not giving up.
Man, the ex-NRL player's got nothing on an Olympic swimmer and Commonwealth swimmer, because the work ethic and the fact that one thing I admire so much about Jo. I've got the biggest human crush on Jo. I just admire her so much. Is it's the confidence, man. Confidence says a lot. If you got someone that comes up to you, man or woman, at 6 foot, looks you straight in the eye, and is very confident and can just pull rank and get stuff done, and everyone's just in admiration of it. Like you're taking them into the ring anytime. You're going into the trenches or zombie warfare with someone that confident and capable.
Yeah.
So
you reckon she's going to take on Dennis, and you'll clean up Wendy real fast, and then two of you go, and then Dennis is gone. That's the strategy, I reckon. By the way, people, we do not condone violence. This is a joke.
No,
right?
No, I think
it's WWE style.
I've never met Wendy, but I think from all reports, like I'll probably just get together and talk about design and cool projects. You know, like
just distracted.
We're in the corner going. Exactly. While they're like over there sweating it out, we'll be like, man, these cornices just do not match. You know, what's that paint color? You know, what's the, you know? But Andrew Winter and Charlie are good mates. So
they work together.
The other good partner to take in there, because they will be hilarious together. Everyone will just probably fall down laughing. I haven't met Andrew.
I don't mean any offense by this with Charlie, but I don't think I wouldn't be taking him in the fight. He's fit and healthy, but I just think he'd be too nice. You know what I mean? Like I think he has the physical capacity to do some damage, but he just mentally doesn't have it. Okay, all right, tell me.
No, he's not nice.
He's got some fight in him?
No, I think it's funny where it's very easy to underestimate Charlie, because we give each other a lot of flack, man, but that's what mates do. But I think he's very much into MMA and UFC.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and he's fit, man. Like he's fit, and fit. 'Cause he did Dancing with the Stars last year, and he was like a friggin' greyhound, an English greyhound. He was just ripped, and he was so fit and just into it. But I know he trains a hell of a lot. But so did Adam. Like Adam did that for dancing as well. But they're both fit in general. Yeah. But no, it's funny. It'd be easy. It'd be easy to underestimate him, because he looks and sounds like Hugh Grant. But and keep that in, please. And but no, he'd give you a run for your money.
All right.
I'll text him now saying you're talking shit, and
so about an hour and 23 minutes in.
Start
listening. Skip the rest. It doesn't matter.
Mate, he'll be listening to this to see if I'm giving him any shit at all, and disappointed if I didn't.
Yeah, well, so I waited so long to get in. He has to work for it. My opinion is his podcast is too short. So, I mean, I guess it still's probably job for it. But, it's an hour it's about an hour and a half where things get good in a podcast anyway. Moving on, because I do have some really good questions from the audience. JMSGGR, that's the Instagram handle, asked, how many stories get cancelled as they didn't quite turn out right? I'm like, that's a great question.
Ooh, in my experience, none.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's pretty good.
There's been, I can only recall once where, there's a few answers to this, but there's only been one instance where it wasn't me. I had a younger offsider where the job he did just wasn't up to scratch. And so we stopped the heroes and went back there the week after to do a slightly better job to finish. And that was, with all due respect to him, it's a hard job. It really is a hard job. And I think the pressure was there. And
when you say young apprentice, do you mean Charlie? Are you just trying to cover him? You know what I mean?
I would never really call him young.
Apprentice suits him, though. Is that what you're saying?
And it was a job that I wasn't on as well, and I felt bad for the guy. Far be it from the end of the world. Like, it was not the end of the world. It was just, you know what? I think we can make that look better. Because as well, what comes into it, we have the big before and after thing, right, of the show, because it's got to be inspirational enough for Mark and Debbie to go, holy shit, that's what our bin bay can look like. Let's go tomorrow. Charlie used these pebbles, these pavers, and that plant. Let's do that. We can do that. So sometimes if the hero just doesn't look good enough, we just go, how can we make it a bit better? But look, saying that, it was a couple of hours work and it looked better. But sometimes a location can fall through. But that's not really something that goes to air and doesn't go to air. I don't know from other departments. I don't think so. Maybe because Joe and, say, Pete Calhoun, they might do a few walkarounds. Maybe something may not go to air, but I don't think it ever has. Because we work behind the scenes, man. We work tirelessly, and each presenter has at least one or two researchers or associate producers. And because we are all aware of this goes to air with this many people watching it, this many people reading it, social media, reruns, that we try and make sure that all boxes are ticked 5 times before we even go ahead. Even though some things do evolve along the way, we're still covering our backs. Not often. Not often. And, so it's good because there's not a whole lot of waste of resources in that way. Even though, like, for one shoot day, you might have anywhere between 6 and 10 hours worth of footage that gets cut down to a 3-minute segment. There's not like we'd spend all that money and go, oh, that's not even going to go to air. Some of those little shortcuts that I've shot at the start of the year, they're still on the board waiting for a rainy day. Mm-hmm. So they'll still go ahead. Yeah. Good question, though. I've been asked that.
I've got a question from, I'm going to mispronounce this, but Janine Zech, I believe it's pronounced, ZSCH. I don't know how you pronounce those letters together, but anyways, do you find that you need to stop the presenters from giving false information during a shoot?
No. No, because they're either experts and they know what they're saying, or...
You don't mind them getting it wrong and being embarrassed because it would be funny for you, you know what I mean?
Well, they generally know. So basically, before a presenter's saying anything to a camera, it's been scripted. And that script is based off a brief from someone like me who has researched it to the eyeballs. Right. So we've kind of got it right. The only time they can say something wrong is a specific, because I reckon it's very hard to be a presenter. I think it would be because, like, someone like Griggsy and others, they can do a 5-minute monologue because she's got a photographic memory and she genuinely cares about what she's doing. So she's just going bang, 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 bang. But if you have to do 5 takes, you might get it wrong. Just like doing a speech 5 times, you're like, oh, I didn't do that word or that word. So you can miss some details, but those missed details very rarely go to air. And if they're picked up in the editing, because then it goes through another filter of editing and then fact checked, and then you got the executive producer and series producer also writing it, watching it and going, "Ooh, is that right?" And if it's not right, cut it out, put the right thing in overlay, or put something in a super at the bottom of the screen. So I do it with Charlie where I go, "Oh no, the plant's pronounced this way," or he likes to say it this way, or I go, no, it was this one. Like, I quite often, as well as all the hats I'm wearing, I'm standing next to the camera as well watching him, and I'm like, yeah, but remember you said this before, so what you said might contradict. So your words, but you need to say it this. And he's like, oh yeah, fair enough. Or I go, no, it was pronounced this, or no, this is the paint color.
Yep.
So that's all the time. They're minor details, because you think about, like, it's a deer in the headlights to stare at the camera. Like, they've got me to do it a few times over the years. And, like, if you put a camera on my face, I'd forget my kids' names because you're like, shit, deer in the headlights. So they do extremely well just doing what they're doing, because you got to hold the eye contact. What am I saying? This is like a 2-minute long thing I need to say, did I get it right? So very rarely do they make big mistakes, and it's not like, and so in terms of misinformation, no way. We just wouldn't, because we realize how many people watch it. We've got our credibility and the credibility about the thing or the person, that we said. So there's no way we'd get dragged over the coals for putting misinformation out there. So yeah, then that's a good thing, because you don't want that out again. But because we get one chance when the camera's there, like if I made a mistake at doing your garden, I'll come back and fix it. But yeah, we don't get to do it when the cameras are there. Like everything has to be bam. And same with info.
We got this question from the Upside Down People podcast. Actually, Caleb, the host of that podcast, has asked, which one does Grahame think is better, the home or the garden? Because you work obviously at Better Homes and Gardens, but you got to make a decision, mate.
Well, a home is nothing without a garden, but you can have a great garden without a home. In my opinion, garden.
Done.
Easy.
That's the deepest question we're ever going to get asked on this podcast. Now, somebody's asked. I won't tell you who it is just quite yet. Ask him for his favorite retractable hose. Now you can guess who it is.
Well, Ben Heyman, my favorite retractable hose is from HoseLink. It's also the one I can't afford. And I keep asking that bitch for a discount. And hey, as I always say to him, it's a wonderful product. They can send me one if they'd like, and I would endorse it. And I would put it on my stories and page and everything. He gifted me a charcoal one a few Christmases ago when he was blind drunk, and instantly regretted it the next morning because I think it was for his place. And it's like, it's so good. He got so excited. I'm like, man, how do I get one of these? He's like, do you want one? Do you want one? And then he's like, follow me to his garage. I'm like, oh, here I go. This is where I get murdered.
Yeah.
And he's like, here you go. He gave me a brand new one in the box, HoseLink charcoal one, and I love it. And that was 4 years ago, and it's best. I make the joke of I've never met a hose I don't hate, like ever. But that hose I love. And he just won't give me another one. HoseLink, please send me a charcoal one. Because he's like, oh, the new one's getting dropped soon. I'm like, cool. And I saw the price. I'm like, yeah, nah. I know they're good and I know they're worth it, but I don't have that money right now. So I've got 2 kids that need soccer boots,
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Have you met Ben?
No, I haven't met him. Do you think he's worth getting on the podcast? What do you reckon? No. Oh yeah, no, I didn't think so either. No, I haven't intended to get him on.
He's a pretty man, and he does beautiful gardens.
Well, what he actually also asked on top of that is ask him why such a pretty man like himself is not on TV. Like, why are you not in front of the camera?
I wouldn't want to. I know people
I think the correct answer is because you don't want to show Charlie off. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to embarrass Charlie. You'd prefer just to, keep the friendship going.
Yeah. His friendship means a lot to me. That made me feel sick saying that. But no, some people really want it. Ben Heyman. Others don't, like me. I can't. I never wanted to. Never really chased it. I'm big fan of podcasts and interviews and speaking to like small groups. I've done a couple of guest speaking to there's a landscape crew based in Wollongong. He's like, mate, we're having a bit of a team motivational day to kick the boys along. We're going to go for surf, might do some golf, blah, blah, blah. Would you come and do an hour? I'm like, yeah. I love that. I love, some workshops and doing that stuff. TV's just never been something that I would ever chase. I've had people put my name forward and encourage me. And you know what? Every shoot I was on with Hodgie, he tried to get me on. Like he just, because we had good banter. So because that's how he came on with Jamie Jury. Like he was Jamie Jury's brickie and landscaper on Backyard Blitz. And mate, Hodgie can banter with the best. And he's such a knock around, likable bloke and rah rah. So they'd throw to Hodgie and be like, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm using this brick and this mortar. I'm going to do rah rah. And he's excellent at that. Whereas I come from an area where like I just wanted to be in the conversation of making it because I'm not TV background obviously, and I didn't necessarily get into it because I wanted a career in TV. But and it's very, very, very nice for people to put my name forward. People that I really respect have put my name forward for things, and I just don't know, man. Like it looks really hard, and maybe that's the kid in me that was too scared to do a talk in front of their class. Like, I don't know if I could do it, you know. But saying that, I think everyone goes through that and they nail it. Like I'm sure Dennis. So Dennis just started doing it a couple of years ago. I'm sure he went through it, and I watched Charlie do it, coming from selling houses where it was a different show to what he's doing now. And I watched him over the years. His presenting style has changed to fit our format. So I know everyone does it, but I just don't know. Like I never really wanted to. And I've seen myself do a few trials, and I've seen the couple of times where I have been on TV talking, I'm like, whoever let me say do that, please never let me do that again. You know, like, it's just not me. I like this. I like being number two. You know, like I have always said, there's great power in being someone's number two. You know, because firstly, if they're going to chop their head off, it's just going to be number one and number two still here. But I like being that person where if someone needs something done, they come to me. Like if someone approaches Charlie, they go, he just goes, speak to G. You know, like even this year, like I kind of massage or manage a lot of Charlie's sponsorships because they just like, I can be straight to the point and get shit done. And so if they approach him, he's like, yeah, cool. Can you speak to G? You know, like, so.
I can totally get that, because if you, having dealt with sponsors myself, and I am business orientated and I can be blunt, and you're like, no, I don't want to do that. It's like, it's nice to have someone in between you so that you don't ruin the relationship by being just honest. Do you know what I mean? I can totally understand how you're giving him some value in that, you know? Anyway, continue.
But yeah, never had it, mate. Like never really had the desire to get in front of TV. But saying that, like if it was, I always say to Charlie as a joke, I'm like, but when you and me have when you and I have our YouTube channel though, we're going to do blah, blah, blah. I bring it up like several times a year. No, but for our YouTube channel, when that gets running, we're going to do this and that. Like I think, because he and I have pretty good banter. It kills me how funny he is at times. Kills me. That I think it would be great banter just to get something done. I do that. I'm just not like a commercial TV on the TV kind of guy, you know, on the screen.
I feel like Charlie's banter in the podcast he does with Still is showing a side of him, which podcasts can do, because you don't have to be short and snappy, and you don't have to be thoughtful. You have to be thoughtful to a certain degree, but not as thoughtful with what you're saying, because, like you said, there's pressure to deliver perfectly. And he seems, like there's a side to him that's a lot more fun. But what I was thinking about, like, because this actually ties into the next question, which my own mother asked, but I thought, talking about Dennis, when we had Dennis earlier on the podcast, and Dennis did 2 of the live events on the tour with us, and so we talked quite a bit, and just understanding what his life is like filming. I actually said to Carrie, I was like, I prefer what I do. But if you had asked me, when I, years and years ago, like, would you ever take an opportunity with Better Homes and Gardens? You'd be like, why the hell wouldn't you? But I really like what I'm doing right now. I really like this podcast stuff. And I can totally see that even though it's great, it would be great fun to be presented. The side of it that is the real world side of it is actually more difficult than what people think. There's a lot more that goes on. And you go, do you know what? Like, you got to take the good with the bad. And I think living 5 minutes away, driving, having, just chucking my camera on, having a great conversation with someone like you, to me, is a lot. That I really enjoy this. I could do this. This is we're 130 something episodes in, and I've got like 100 guests I haven't had on yet, and I'm looking forward to every single one of them. So what was coming to mind then when I was saying that?
You said if an opportunity come along to work on Better Homes and Gardens, you said, why the hell would I do that? That's what I said 10 years ago. Because I had a friend that worked on the show, Natalie Bray. I grew up playing soccer with her hubby Gareth, and she worked in like product placement and sponsorships, and say the green power tool that we didn't mention before. She'd get them on board or work out the ins and outs, and she always knew me and my personality, and she's like, "Hey, you'd be great as a researcher for Better Homes and Gardens. I'll let you know when a job comes up." I said, "Why the fuck would I do that?" And a job did come on, and she's like, "Hey, jobs come up, you'd be great at it." And I'm like, "Why the fuck would I do that?" Because at the time, I was at Government House in New South Wales for the Royal Botanic Garden Sydney. My history is in historical gardens and properties. That's my jam. And at the time, I had a scholarship from the Friends of the Royal Botanic Gardens to go to England and work on a few properties that bloke Ben that you mentioned, I can't remember his last name. He went over to,
who are we talking? Who are we even talking about?
Oh, the Hoselink guy.
No, I forgot him too. Sorry.
Yeah, I try to, and so I had a great gig, and I was historical gardens, heritage gardens, history of horticulture. Of the evolution of, not necessarily how long have people been using mushroom compost, that stuff, but like the history of gardens. And I loved it because it tells the story of people alongside gardening, right? Because wherever there's been people, they've been needing plants for whatever reason. So gardening has been around as long as people have.
We have.
And so, and I looked into it, and then my wife goes, "Why don't you look into that?" Oh, why would I? And I used to have a whole lot of apprentices and staff that I'd mentor and push and all that. And I'm like, well, I can't tell them to push themselves if I'm not going to take this. But saying that, I've got a state government job with every benefit you can imagine. Why would I go to TV where there's no security in TV? But out of the pie chart of reasons, the biggest one was to work in front of Grahame Rowe. Like the irony was I had to leave the garden industry to go to the TV industry just to work with the leader of the garden industry. And my whole thing was, I want to meet him, work in front of him, hopefully get his blessing, and then he sends me in a trajectory that I would have never got to otherwise. Whereas this scholarship could get me in the side door with a couple of properties in England. If this experiment works, G could get me in the front door. And so I'm like, okay, take a leap of faith with absolutely no safety net, and never gave myself an option to fail because I had a wife that wasn't really working at the time. Well, she was, actually, no, she was like doing a few days a week at Botanic Gardens, still 2 kids, and I just could not fail. And I just had to nail this. I just had to make the landing stick. And so I tried to leave every week for 2 years because I was incredibly uncomfortable because it was so hard. And it's just such a hard job to get your head around, which is why that young kid didn't do that good, and people can come in and burn out. But I think a few people left and got out of the way, so to speak, and I had the opportunity to really grab it. And then I realized that one day I've gone, oh, fucking watch me go now. And I remember just like ripping in, and I made it into what it kind of is now. Say 6 or 7 years ago, I could change it into work for me. And it was when Hodgie was there, and I just stepped up 10 levels and really went for it. And another reason I wanted to do it was a mate reminded me every time I was trying to leave. He would remind me, he's like, man, the reason you're there, you arrogantly said to yourself, I'm going to jump into a heavily commercialized machine and change the output. That's how good I am, you know? So like, well, now I've got an opportunity to change what people see on TV, you know, leave my footprint on things. And not saying because I'm right or wrong or whatever, but I'm like, I need goals and I need to work towards things. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna nail this and I'm gonna change that. And it was a long game to work with G and all that stuff. But at the same time, along the way, I found all the opportunities that can come along if you harness it and you use it, of what's there, you know, like the networking and the resources. And coming from Government House New South Wales opened some doors. People take you serious. But then you go, hey, it's Grahame Rowe calling from Better Homes and Gardens TV. How are you? They're like, how can I help? You know, like wearing the uniform around someone, they go, hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Like I remember even at the trade day at Ride TAFE where I did my apprenticeship like a month or so ago, I went there just in uniform and, you know, people are like, oh, hey, how's it going? Rah, rah. Like, hey, man, like I'm not there for that, but it's nice. And people want to network with you. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I really like about it. And so after I had a couple of years off and I got back into it this year, I'm like, no. The reason I'm back is to reestablish my network, get my relevance back and go again. And I fell in love with the opportunities that can come from it, albeit a very difficult job. But mine was always, I never wanted to be here forever. I wanted to essentially work with Grahame and his company and his family and his businesses. And because at the heart, I'm a garden nerd. So, I'm just in this like very lucky and privileged position. But saying that, podcasts went around back then. Like there's no podcast 10 years ago over here. Definitely not a gardening one. If so, you know, there would be radio shows, you know, like Graham's had his for 40 years, but there was like an interactive one. Maybe wasn't even audiobooks really that far back. But saying that, like I love the podcast like you. Like I could check in with you once every couple of months. Like the fact that Joel called me for his 200th, I'm like, mate, let's do this every couple of months, man, just to check in and just as a banter, as a check-in, or do this and get a guest in because you've got different questions to me. And, you know, because like with when Charlie and I get our YouTube channel up, that could be another thing where, well, let's both of us interview this guy. Or, you know, we both love this designer, let's get her on, you know, like, so I think it's great. I mean, and because there's so much information and insight into these conversations as well. So, but look, it is what it is. I jumped on and here I am now. So,
well, I was going to ask you. I don't mean this, and you know this, right? And I'm just clarifying before I ask the question. It looks like you've got a very good relationship with Charlie, and you also had a very good relationship with Hodgie, by the sounds of it. Do you miss working with Hodgie? Do you miss working like that, or do you feel like that was great for them? That season's done. I'm grateful for that. Do they ever feel like getting the band back together with any of the previous presenters? Sometimes, you know.
No, I'm more on what you said, where that was good while it lasted. This is where it is now. I will always make the most of the situation I'm currently in because anything can change at any minute. And then the next situation I'm mindful of being, and maybe that's just being a dad of like, I want to live every second I'm doing this or making my time count. Hodgie and I will always be mates. I saw him about 2 weeks ago. So I went to my Bunnings. They had a bit of a trade thing set up and they called me down and said, hey, lunch is on us, come down. And obviously got me with the lunch. But when I turned up,
look at me too. Don't worry.
Yeah. And I'm like, there's a lawn solutions thing here. Like, who's here for lawn solutions? And they've gone, Kate and Jason. I'm going, Hodgie. And they go, yeah. I'm like, righto, I'll hide over there. And so we always catch up for cuddles, mate. Like it'd be nothing for me to call him or him call me, and just kind of talk shit for 2 hours. We used to because he's not far from me. He's like 40 minutes from me. So if I'm
really?
south, I can. Yeah. He's just down the road at Berry. Got two beautiful properties down.
You're gonna have to tell him off for me, all right?
Right, you've been trying to get him on.
I have, and he is one of the most disorganized people I've ever dealt with in my life. He's always been, to give his credit, he's always been very friendly and very enjoyable on the phone. And he'll answer the call, and he's like, "Oh, mate, I'm just driving," or something like that. Send me a message or do this or whatever. But I went to Berry on the tour, and I did the Lawn Solutions podcast. And I was like, well, I'm in Berry. Like, I can just rock up to your house with some microphones.
You still couldn't meet up with him though, could you?
No, I told him, he was like, yeah, I'm going to be here on this day. Okay. Is that day good? He's like, yeah, it should be fine. Right. And then like 3 days before, I'm like, I'm going to call him just in case. He's like, oh, mate, I'm actually in Sydney on that day. And I was like, man, I don't know. He's always welcome. And it's like, I told him like, oh, look, there's no, like that happens. And look, the frank truth is that I was also kind of not glad that I didn't have the conversation, but glad there was one less thing on my to-do list because it was literally Canberra live event, drive to Berry the next day, 2 podcasts in a day, 1 day off, drive to Sydney live event the next. Like it was nuts in that little specific bit of time.
Yeah.
But man, he's hard to organise.
So that's a little bit of what he was like to work with.
Right. Okay.
He's just very different. He's very different, like he's just fly by the seat of your pants, just get stuff done. Like he's got like a million pots on the boil as well. But no, like I think the first time around I spoke to Joel like for EP1. He's EP1. It was actually a really stressful time for me because Hodgie rang me to tell me that he wasn't coming back. And I'm like, oh, did they say anything about me? Because I'm you. Like I do your content. What you say and do is me. Like, and then he's like, no, they didn't mention you. And then Charlie's on board, and it's just like, it was almost like someone came along and with your wife and kids, you went, had fun? Cool. They're gone. Here's Sally and her 2 kids. I was like, right. So it was far be it. Like I didn't lose my job. I didn't not get a contract, or I didn't leave. But still, it was hard for me because, now I'm mates with both of them. I make the joke that I'm the kid in the divorce. It's like, I just don't get twice the presents at Christmas. But should remind them both of that. But so and you know what, dude? Like, to be perfectly honest, who I was with Hodgie for those 5 years, and even up until I left, I had 5 with him and then 2 with Charlie, and then I was away for 2. Who I was before my break is entirely different to who I am now. So where I am now, I would have, it is only because of the break. I was a different kid back then. Like it was only a few years ago, but I remember I associate me working with Hodgie, and it's nothing to do with Hodgie, but I associate my time with Hodgie as jumping into TV, working out, what am I doing here? Being incredibly uncomfortable and feeling like I didn't fit, wasn't good enough, like every day. And then, but trying so hard every day, but then not realizing if I was doing a good enough job or whatever else was, because I was the new kid there. Everyone else had been there for so many years. And TV, again, forget everything you know about running a business or running a project or a job. So I associate the first several years there as being very unhappy because I just didn't know. I was just worried, scared, thinking I wasn't good enough, wanted to leave, square peg, round hole kind of thing, didn't fit it. And it was, whereas, it wasn't until like 5 years ago that a friend of mine She does all the interior design for the show, and we're a lot the same. And she said to me, "So what's wrong?" I'm like, "I just need to leave. I just have to go. I just have to go." She's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I just don't fit. I just don't fit here." The feeling that everyone has since a kid, right? I don't fit here because they're getting along. Why am I in that group? Why am I get because there's only one of you in this position, so you have to be the expert in that position. But I was like, I just can't. I just don't fit. She's like, "Okay, but when you get to the next place, are you going to fit there?" I'm going, "That's brutal. That's brutal." And she's like, "Mate, we're creatives. We don't fit anywhere. We are just who we are." I'm like, and that settled me down. That really settled me down. I was like, "Oh, right. Oh, okay." And it took those years for me to get my head around and have that realization that I did settle down. So, yeah, I'm different now. If I was working with Hodgie, I'm different. And I think he would be too, having the break.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very hard to compare working with both to each other. I mean, firstly, they're very different guys. They just are, different careers, even though they're both landscape presenters on the same show. Doesn't matter. Like, they're both from different walks of life, come up with different upbringings, both good designers, but yeah, could not be more different to work with, but that also has a lot to do with me as well, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mate, I kind of feel like it's kind of like when you're at school, right? And you have all these friends at school, in high school, and then, everything changes and you leave and you don't see them anymore. And then you come back in 3 years, 4 years, you're now in your 20s. And you're like, I'm not actually the person that I was at 17. Yeah. And there might not be drastic differences, but let's say, I've gone a little bit to the west, just as a geographical analogy, and you've gone a little bit east. And we used to be very similar. And now it's like just that little change. And, I still appreciate you. But it's not the same as it used to be. In that environment with those people, things have changed. And maybe sometimes there'll be the opposite happens. Somebody that you're like, oh, we don't have that much similarities. 5 years later, you're like, actually, we are quite similar. Maybe kids change, so whatever. But I can definitely, what I mean is at the end of the day, we all reminisce about, wouldn't it be great to go back to those days? Wouldn't it be great to? It's like, you're not actually that person anymore, and going back to those days would feel very different. I've seen my Facebook memories from what I posted when I was in high school. And I'm frankly embarrassed, if I'm being totally honest. So I don't know if I want to go back to those days because that guy was an
idiot. So I had some incredible memories from that time because the show was in a different space as well. But I had I went to Dubai with the show with Hodgie. That was a week of the best memories. We've been some places for the show, him and I, but also some good memories outside the show, again, because he's not far from here. But the biggest thing that changed was me leaving because where I was last time, and I went into this with Joel's one, was, I left high school. I'm not an academic at all. Again, I found out way too late, but I'm a creative. So I left high school going, right, if I'm going to get anywhere, it's up to hard work. And all I wanted to do was be anywhere but where I grew up. I had a great upbringing, beautiful area on Central Coast of New South Wales. But I was a kid that wanted way more than was available to me. And, I think sometimes the worst thing you can do is have a kid in his room looking at the map of the world going, well, why aren't I anywhere else? Why am I still here? And so that, with not having a good enough mark to get me anywhere, because of the tests that you are governed by and that narrate where you go, I was like, well, it's up to hard work. And so everything I did, as soon as I got the apprenticeship when I was 18, that was the first thing ever that I took serious. I'm like, I'm in a real opportunity here. I can jump from here. And I remember never, ever, ever giving myself an option to fail. And I always said, I want to leave my handprint on the arse of everything I do. And so I took my apprenticeship serious, and then I left the apprenticeship after you're indentured for 4 years, then you're out. And then in those jobs and everywhere else, and I went back after 7 years to state parliament house for the Botanic Gardens, and then government house. And everything I did was, it's not good enough that I'm here, I need to nail it. I got the job, great. That was the dream, I need to nail it. You know, my wish when I was an apprentice, 3 weeks into an apprenticeship, was at Government House. My first 3-month rotation was at Government House, New South Wales. And I'm like, not good enough that I got this job. I want to run this place one day. Super arrogant, but I need to keep working towards stuff. And then by the time I took this job, I was practically running it because I was 2 IC, but the 1 IC was never there. But that wasn't good enough to get that job. I wanted to nail it. So I was working on recurating to make it look horticulturally accurate of its period that it was built in, you know. And so I've always had this red line of go, 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 go. So then I get to Better Homes, and like anyone, they will take as much as you want to give. If you want to give everything, great, we'll take it. We'll take it. And I got to a certain point, I'm like, marriage is under stress. My mental health's not good, and I haven't seen the kids in weeks, and my back is shot. Like, I worked that hard in my first year at Better Homes that I needed surgery at the end of the year. I had a spinal surgery. And, well, why am I doing this? And then it wasn't until Kim, my wife, said, everyone that you work for and work with, they get the best of you. Me and the kids, we get what's left over. And I'm like, oh, shit. And so she never had the chance of thinking, well, what do I want to do? You know, I don't get to retrain or try this because you're never here. And then so I needed to leave Better Homes because I was still redlining, and I didn't want to. Like, I was utterly devastated to leave Better Homes because from 18, that kid in his room worked so hard to get to this job, and I'm like, how am I the gardener's honour on a TV show where all I did was chase waves, skateboard, and look at girls and do after-hour kind of drinking and drug use through high school, you know, like just friendly stuff. So I was so proud, but I walked away from it with all this unfinished business. Like, I hadn't got the trajectory that I'd said maybe I'll get with G, you know, and all this stuff. And I was utterly devastated to leave, but I knew I had to. And I went into real estate because they came looking. The people who sold our house said, we would love to have you. You're our first draft pick. Would you ever consider leaving and come with us? Not knowing that I was trying to leave. And I thought, well, that's a massive challenge, great discomfort, and room to learn about myself, but mainly work 10 minutes from home. So I'm here for the kids. So after I told him where to go, I started thinking about what it could be. I'm like, this is the right thing to do. Right. And so I took the job, and I said to Kim, baby, go retrain. And so I was, bit of mental health check here, but like, I was miserable all day, every day for those 2 years. And it wasn't anything to do with the company I work with. They were above and beyond to accommodate me. Got some lifelong friends there, utmost respect for the company. I was the issue. But it was a matter of, bro, fuck your feelings. It works for the family. I was home doing the lunches, doing the school drop, doing the after school sport. So when my wife got home at 9:30 at night, sweet, dinner's over there, baby. Just maybe an hour, a minute and a half in the microwave. How's your day? And so every piece of the pie chart worked for me to do that job, except for one. And that small piece was the fucking loudest. And I couldn't turn it off. I'm like, I'm not happy. I'm so not happy. I'm not happy. Far be it from having like a terminal disease or losing a child or family member or whatever. This was just 2 years of my life where I wasn't being myself, and that was torture to not be myself. If the show finished, I'd be like, well, that was good. But I left the show with unfinished business. And I felt like I broke a promise to myself from so many years ago. And then I got to the middle of last year, and I must have said something to Kim, and she said something the next day. She's like, we're going to unpack that a bit. I'm like, what? She goes, oh, you said a few things. I'm like, oh, look, make no mistake. I wake up every day and I'm miserable all day, but it works for the family. Hey, it works for the family, right? And I was good at my job. And I'm like, and she's like, well, look, we always knew that if it worked, it worked. But if it didn't, it was going to be temporary. I'm going to be qualified by December, working locally from December. So do what you want to do. I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't have to do this. Shit. Every single day I woke up after that, I was stoked. One, because I finally said it. Shout out to every dude with feelings, maybe talk a fucking about it. But I didn't have to be there. And then like the timing, whoever choreographed the next part, dude, deserves an award. And because Grahame Ross was always a mentor to me, and I was mates with Charlie, spoke to Charlie all the time, spoke to my replacement, James, all the time. So I was still very much into it, and it was just torturing me. And then winning Mifkus with Charlie was like the worst thing that's ever happened to me, because like I just didn't recover from that, and I knew that's part of his plan. Yeah, what do you think?
Sneaky.
What are you doing? Yeah, what are you doing?
You a taste. It gave you a taste back of the industry. It's like the little free little baggie the drug dealers give you to get you hooked.
And that taste wasn't come and help me on a job. It was like, let's fucking win Mifkus together, bro.
Yeah.
So with all the pressure that he had on him at that time, for him to go Mifkus next year, I need you to do my plants. I'm like, fuck, as a real estate agent, can I do that? So but then I had this chat with Kim, and then I was like, do I reach out to G? No, don't do that. That reeks of desperation. Don't force it, man. Like, you've always followed your gut. Don't force it. And I just had that epiphany one day of like, do I? Don't I? No, don't do it. And then a weekend later, like within the same week or two, I had to drive back to my parents' house, because they're an hour and a half north of Sydney. I'm an hour and a half south, give or take. And then I drove up on a Saturday with my daughter. I just go up to see Nan and Pop, had to get something from them. And then I drove past Graham's office on the way at night. Like, I didn't stop to see him, but I just slowed down and went, that's weird. Like, I was just thinking of him the other day. And that was it. I kept driving, got to the Central Coast, sat down to dinner with my daughter. He's like, okay, what are you going to order? Blah, blah, blah. And I saw my phone glow up. I looked over, and it was a message from Grahame Ross on Instagram. Mate, when you're in Sydney again, me and Sandra have got something we want to talk to you about. Let us know. And I'm going, is he here? Is he? Am I going to cut him? And I was just like, almost tears in my eyes. So I was like, I just went, mate, I would love that. I'll let you know. Cut a long story short, called a meeting, sat down with him, and it was probably the best conversation I've had in my career. He just sat down. He's like, so how are you, mate? How are you? You know, how's the wife? How's the kids? How old are they? So what are you up to? You like it? You know, it was just a grandfatherly hug, and just talking about life. And I didn't know what was going to come from it, I should say. And afterwards, I've got a job for you. And I'm going, oh, me? Because he was just talking, blah, 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 blah. I've got a job for you. And I actually went, for me? Or was that part of your story? He was like, for you, mate. I'm fucking talking to you. I'm like, sorry, G. And part of under his umbrella of Grahame Ross and the garden clinic is Ross Garden Tours, nationally and international garden tours. And he's like, we'd love for you to consider coming on board. We think you'd be great at it. We've been thinking of it for a little while, and we think you'd be great at it. And I was like, yes, yep, straight away, yep, no worries, anything you need. Because in my head, I'm like, that's the fucking job. That's the job from 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, he offered it to me as a real estate agent, you know? And I've gone, well, I know who he handpicks to do them. And they're people who I admire in the industry. And that was just a yes straight away. But I thought, well, I don't want to do that job without my industry relevance back, you know? I don't want people to look into who's doing the tour, a real estate agent from Wollongong. And so that was a Wednesday. I said yes to him. Wednesday I said yes to him, and by the Friday, same week, watching my son at soccer practice, Better Homes rang. said, would you consider coming back starting from next year? And I was like, my wife will be qualified, working from home. Kids are older. Kids will be fine. My wife will be home. Fuck, what an opportunity.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's how I got back. And it's the 2 years of being humbled. This is a long way to get back to your question. But hey, it was a good story. I'm different because I was humbled for 2 years. But I got the opportunity to go, well, do I want to do something else? Because this is local. This is 10 minutes from home. I'm here for the kids, And then I got the no. I want to go back, but I also got Grahame Rowe grabbed me by the throat and dragged me back in the industry and welcome back with a hug to Better Homes. But my wife is settled. My kids are older. The bus stop is out the front. So I'm like, I can do this. I can do this.
I've got to have to tell you a bit of my life story for this, but I was listening to a preacher and he talked about how when you get your foundational elements of your life right, the other things seem to follow suit, right? If you focus on the fruit of the tree, right, you can staple on some pretty fruit and then it dies and falls off. You got to focus on the roots. You got to focus on the health of the plant and the good fruit comes. And the order that he talked about was that, and this, I'm a Christian, but this is a sort of a universal feature of life, not a religious lesson, was that you would put your for your relationships, your wife first, your kids second, and the reason is that the goal of your life is that your wife never leaves, but the goal with your kids is that they actually eventually leave, but they're really healthy when they leave. Your work comes third, and then your hobbies and what people might call their ministry, which would be sort of your volunteer stuff, the stuff on the side that's meaningful, then that comes after that. And the idea is that, like, when you've got a great relationship with your wife, the kids go really well, right? To start with, it's better, right? When the kids and the wife are going really well, it's easier to have success in career, right? Because your foundations are set. When you're really successful then in your career, right, you actually have more time and capacity to serve and do your hobbies. If you get it backwards and you try and serve, try and do your service and your hobbies and things like that, and then you put your work on and your wife and your kids get the dregs, you actually find that a lot of it falls apart anyway.
Yep.
And I have found this.
I reckon a lot of people fall into that for sure.
And it's just, yeah, you
go. And I can relate to that with my first time round. Just threw everything at it. But I also try to spread myself too thin and give everything 100%, and that's where you burn out. But I agree. I really do agree with that well, especially this time round, everything I did in the past and now is for them, essentially, one way or another. Or they are in a much better space where I'm okay to go, I'm just going to be over here. You're good. Like I resonate with that for sure.
I had this season of my life. I used to be a competitive swimmer, and I've got a autoimmune condition, and as a result, I've got a lack of mobility in certain joints and things like that. And so I actually am I'm a classified swimmer. So I would, if I was to make an Australian team, I'd be going to a Paralympics as a minimum affected athlete. And I used to swim competitively, and I actually represented Australia 3 times, but I never made a major event. So I represented Australia at sort of secondary events with some great swimmers, some famous people, but I never made a Paralympics. I never made a World Championships. I never made a Com Games. And I had been told that I had the potential to do that. Now, at a certain time in my life where I was swimming competitively, which was my late teens, early 20s, I didn't actually have a father in my life. My parents got divorced. My dad had gone outside the country. And what had happened was the national head coach, whose name was BK, or Brendan Keogh, he had become like this father figure to me. Great guy. So similar to how you see Grahame Rowe, this guy was the national head coach of the Australian Paralympic program. And I realized later on in life that I was really actually motivated for swimming in a big part to impress that father figure that I had. The swimming was secondary. And it got to a point where I was trying to make this the 2016 Paralympics. And the amount of work to run a business and to make a Paralympic team was essentially stupid to take on. It was one of those stupid things that grows you and it works and it works you well and you learn a lot from it, but it wasn't an intelligent decision. It was an emotional decision. And a big part of that was trying to impress, I didn't realize at the time, but I do now, trying to impress the national head coach and trying to live up
was he
to
over there
exactly.
Over in Perth?
No, he's in Queensland.
Right.
And I realized that I was sacrificing the more important things for what was essentially the hobby, the side gig, the bottom of the rung thing. My career was suffering because I was waking up at 4:45 or even early some days, and I was getting home at 8:10 at night because I'd go to training, I would work, then come home, I'd work after a quick, breakfast, and then I would come home in the afternoon, again, quick snack, bang, second training, and I couldn't juggle everything. I was doing it all poorly. And that's when this sort of lesson came in. And I was like, no, I've got this exactly backwards. I've got my hobby as my number one thing, and changed it all up. I did this tour, right? And I let go of trying to impress Brendan Keogh, the national head coach. And I know he was that great figure. That's why I liked him. He would have never wanted me to feel that pressure. Anyways, we stay connected, and every now and then I would have lunch with him if I was ever in Brisbane. And anyways, very rarely get a message from him. I'm doing this tour, and I've decided this year I'm going to take on the challenge of doing this tour. It's all self-funded. We had sponsors, but it's bootstrapped. It's simple. Anyone who came knows that they weren't these big fancy events. It was just trying to get something and meet people, and it's creating this stir. And anyway, just before I leave, I get this message from Brendan Keogh, who's seen what's going on. And he says something to the effect of, Luke, just want to let you know that I've been seeing what you're doing on social media, and I'm really proud of what you've done. And it's really amazing, and keep up the good work. And I showed my wife, because BK doesn't know this, but I actually had to let go of trying to impress BK in my early 20s. Because he was that father figure, and I never achieved what I thought I could achieve in the pool, and that's what I thought. And so I let go of that, and when I let go of that, I chased the other things that were actually more important. I ended up getting to the point where I got that validation that I had stopped looking for, but had been looking for when younger. And it sounds like a similar story to you, that you wanted to do these international gardens, you wanted to chase this sort of thing. And you made the sacrifice to not look for it, and it came around to you anyway. You got the thing you were looking for.
Well, yeah, at the time I took this job, the place I wanted to go most was a place called Great Dixter. And there's 150 other gardens as well, but let's just say Great Dixter. And because of every reason why I fell in love with the place from afar, having never been there. But the scholarship was 1 week training with the head gardener. And I'm going to use that to change stuff at the Botanic Gardens. Walked away from that thinking, who knows? And then these tours that I'm now, I start my first one on Monday. In 2 days.
Yeah.
I started. That's my first one.
It's Saturday. Yeah, it's Saturday when we're recording.
And one of their tours goes to Dixter, and so that's
amazing.
That's the chance I took. But I said that to him. I'm not on their Dixter tour, but if this goes well and I'm a part of their company from here on, I will, and I'll be going there with the backing of head of the industry. Sent over there to tour, to meet, that is where it came off. But, it was, break my heart to walk away from both of them, but it's taken a long time, man. That's the way the universe works. But 100%. And that was the why. And I think for G was I guess I saw him as the pinnacle rather than, and he just happened to like take me under his wing, not in a way of today with this is how you tie your shoes and this is what you're going to eat and rah rah, not that. But when I see him, just from afar with a stick pointing me in that direction, that direction. Hey, I think that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And because his first thing he ever did was when I was trying to leave 2 years in. I confessed all to him and said, I'm sorry, I've got to leave. I took this job to work for you and I'm so sorry. I can't, I'm square peg round hell. I don't fit. And he let me talk. He's like, you done? Yeah? Are you finished? You done? I'm like, yeah, sorry. And he said, there's a garden called Mayfield out at Oberon. He's like one of the biggest private gardens in the Southern Hemisphere. Called me asking who can replace the horticulture manager. He goes, you're the only person I can think of. So he got an interview on Tuesday. I got, I guess I'm moving to Oberon. Because that's not a thing to think about. When someone like BK or someone like G says things, that's the next step. It's not a choice. And cut a long story short, it came down to me, and I think it was the curator of Hunter Valley Botanic Gardens that came down to, and they went with him. And I thought, if you want a tourism spot, you got the right guy. I'm not your tourism guy. I just wanted to do horticulture at the time. Yeah. But that was like, oh shit, okay, that was close. But it also opened myself and my wife up to the bigger picture of, we are open for change as well. And so that's where all these things became options and windows opening through my time at being at Better Homes, because the amount of growth personally and professionally I had while I was there, personally with myself and my wife as we're getting older, becoming parents, and all these things were opened up to me while I was there, because you can just go whip mow blow for the same crew for 40 years and that's happiness for you, power to you. But there's also, I work for a TV show and we're fucking global, or we're this and this and that. And like, it opens your mind up. And also for the kids as well, like it's more so now because they've seen me leave my job to do this for them and their mum, but then to go back, because they love watching me draw. All my designs are hand drawn, textures, paints, fucking everything but crayons. And because I do it because that's my connection with the design for someone. They love watching me draw, and then they love watching the progress shots, but then they see what dad's drawings on TV. And so that's pretty incredible for them. So I think about how much I'm open, and I got here on the back of someone who cared for the elderly and disabled, like my mum, and a self-made butcher, my dad. So I'm like, if I'm here, well, maybe my kids can springboard somewhere else as well. So all these things only happened because I put myself out there and, just go, push. But there's lessons along the whole way, lessons waiting for you to get to that certain mark and go, hey, here's a good one, or hey, here's a real bad one. This is going to hurt. But that's part of it, isn't it? That's adulting.
I sent you this message, this question beforehand, right? And I'm glad I did, because it probably gives you some time to think about it. But most of your pieces, I would say, what would you say? Maybe informational.
Yeah.
What would you say is the piece you've done that is the most meaningful, though? The program, or whatever you would call it, on Better Homes and Gardens that has left a lasting mark in your life?
Ooh, not an easy one. There's probably not one, to be frustrating, because every scenario, story, angle, and design and makeover is different. They range from, my first ever one, which is terrible, and I look back onto it, it's like the Facebook post that comes up in memories. Significant for me in terms of growth. Holy shit, I made it. But then there's the giant ones that I've done from a personal point of view that I go, I fucking did that without fear, and millions of people are going to watch it. Look how far you've come. Like, you turned off the doubt, you've turned on the confidence, and you back yourself. But then there's been ones where I've helped people that last forever with me, especially if it's hard to do. But then this is where I've given someone else everything and then I return home broken. But one that comes to mind was I had to do a bloody impossible job of a massive outdoor area for a dementia-specific retirement village.
Right.
And I had to get that right, man. Like, I knew nothing about dementia and threw myself into it to the point where at the end of it, I had Dementia Australia and head of Hammond Care, who it was through, pull me aside and say, hey, we want you to consider consulting for us and redesigning every single garden that we have under our ownership. And I've gone, so I did good then, but that wasn't my highlight. My highlight was no one used it because the garden design was so outdated for what they now know about dementia.
Yep.
And it was really hard 3 weeks, but the feedback was there are now lines indoors for people waiting to get out there. So all the patients would look at it, I want to be out there. And it was like Easter show crowds, which isn't advisable for dementia sufferers, but there were people lining up inside waiting for enough people to come back inside so they can get out. I was like, oh my God, like I helped, not only did I help someone's nan and pop, but I helped someone's mum and dad and just them, like they now have a space. Like, those people sitting there have been considered. And I did it. Like, that was a good one. That was a really good one. Another one was we helped a kid who'd lost his dad, man. Wife, just the wife and the son. And like, we went around there, and these ones always get me. But met the kid who his fucking best mate had died a couple of weeks ago, his dad. And he's staring at this bloody basketball hoop they used to play with his dad. And I'm like, oh, this is going to fucking break me. And the garden made no sense. House was like shambles. And it was very hard logistically. I'm like, what if that was me? What if someone had my son's back? What if someone had my wife's back? I've got the opportunity here to help them out. And I remember, like, this always gets me emotional, but like even making within the garden, like I made him a bench so he could sit there and talk to his dad. And it was like, it was so special to do because it made so much difference to him. But even when something that's not that emotionally attached, if people are asking for help and I get to help them, and it's like, it could just be a fucking new letterbox, bro, $20 of rapid set, but like it could be their new bin bay, or it could be, I got you, man. I'm gonna reconfigure your backyard or your courtyard, and they're just so happy. Like all of those, I love them because it's not my money, it's not their money. And when I turn up, they're so excited that they're like, oh, the garden designer from Grahame Gardens is here. Can I take a photo? It's so funny. And I'm like, I see how special this is for you, and I'm here for it. But if you can allow me to indulge myself, I need to hit a few targets with the show because I need to do it this angle this week. But you trust me, I'm going to fucking nail this for you. And and I'm still friends with people that I met in my first and second year because I've become part of their family. But I like those ones, and even I did a really big one with Hodgie and Adam a long time ago where I went all in with something. Let's push myself, because every job I do, I push myself out of my comfort zone. I'm doing something I've never done before. But I went all in. And I remember a couple of months later, a handwritten letter with printed out photos made its way to my desk. And it was someone who was so inspired by our design, he made one himself, smaller version. And he took photos of it and he sent it in thanking us. He's like, what do you think of mine? You know, this was someone like, I think it was like a retiree, you know, just having a crack. And it was like, I kept the photo, man. And I wrote him back. I'm like, thank you so much for that. Meant a lot to me that something I did meant something so much to someone that they made it. And then they went to the trouble of going, here's a photo of it. Thank you so much. Here's my name. If you ever, like, that's fucking cool, man. Like, that's cool. Through to the, I really liked bringing awareness to industry experts, the unsung heroes, the backyard experts, the plant nerds, where, you know, like I go, hey, like we did this staghorn grower this year that only people within the industry have heard of him. He lives up, you know, like towards Byron. No one really knows him, but people in the know him. An absolute expert in just staghorns and a couple other things, but just staghorns. I'm like, if you let us, we'll be non-invasive. I just like to tell you a story. You know, I like those ones as well, because not that people, you know, he doesn't necessarily do it for a pat on the back or for more sales, but like, you know, he can look at his grandkids and go, I was on telly. You know, that person has been acknowledged. You know, like I like that stuff. But yeah, not all of them have the heart, but the very least, I leave someone with something that they would never have got. And I'm in an incredibly blessed and privileged position to help people, and I fucking love it. But at the same time, I get to do that. That's just me loving my job, because the job itself, I benefit from, hopefully from where I end up. But along the way, if I can help people too, then, you know, that's amazing. But yeah, I don't even know if that answered your question.
That was good. No, we asked for the most meaningful ones. Like that's good. I've got one more thing before we wrap this up. Yep. Which again is going to change the temperature and the tone of the conversation a little bit. Is basically I'm asking for free consulting here, because part of your job and part of my job are exactly the same, in that you have to find people who are really interesting, or stories or angles. And my challenge as a podcaster is that there is a lot of people who don't have a social media presence who would be amazing on a podcast. But it's so hard to find people who aren't on social media. And so, and the flip side is some people who are on social media who have a large following because they're good at the social media game, not necessarily because they're actually good. Now, there's plenty of people who are amazing and have good social media followers too. So I'm not throwing shade at anyone specifically.
I know what you're saying,
who should I get on the podcast? Who are people who come to mind that we might not have known about them because of social media? Don't say Ben. You know, like that's if he's still listening. You know, I'm just having a laugh. Charlie hasn't gone back to my message, which I'm not surprised by, because he probably gets 1,001 messages and Instagram is rubbish.
I'll get into him. You know what?
Tell him you quit. Tell him you quit if you don't. What was that?
Oh, I was saying, like, I'll do it with Charlie. It'd be good banter.
Mate, it'll be a 7-hour-long podcast. I reckon 3 people podcasts, 2 of them have got to be in the same room. That's the problem.
Yeah,
because the internet becomes an issue with a video call across 3 different people. But next time I'm over there. But I'm wanting, specifically the people I'm really asking about are the people who aren't known. You know, everyone knows who Charlie is in the industry. But the people who, like you said, working at a staghorn, you know, working in a nursery, experts in that, the people who are kind of the unsung heroes, a little bit like yourself in the sense that they're not necessarily on the screen, but they've got great stories and great experience, and they really know what they're talking about.
more are gonna come as soon as we hang up. I think
just message them into me later.
I will. Yeah, I honestly think I don't know if you would do it, but Shannon, who I said Shannon Atkins Landscape Group, I'll speak to him and I'll get Dennis to get into him because he's our mutual mate.
Yep.
Because his story is following his dad's footsteps, but also what he does is he builds TV, right? He builds TV gardens. So the timeline of a TV build and the pressure of a TV build is like nothing else you've ever done in your trade. He does it so well. He's a phenomenal operator. Outside of TV, he's still a landscaper, but what his specialty is, well, not one of his it was one of his specialties. He does like all the ancient retaining walls out of sandstone in the Sydney Harbour for properties. If they talk about access and logistics and knowing his shit, he'd be good. There's also like real plantsmen and nurserymen that I think their stories are good. One guy I really admire, Peter Nixon. He's a real plant nerd. He is on social media, and I haven't had contact with him for a few years, but he's a like Charlie and I. We do plantscaping, where your landscaping revolves around your plants. His plant knowledge is phenomenal. There are 100 others plantsmen that I know that you could be like, oh, that's a good chat. But there's also the risk too, if it's too nerdy, that people might go, oh, that's okay. I like begonias, but that's probably too much. I think.
Well, that's the thing about podcasts that, like, I think the difference between what you do and what we do is that everybody watches your show and they're kind of forced to watch the program that you put in front of them, because whereas with a podcast, people will look at the title and they just won't click on it. And the people who do click on it are actually genuinely interested. So, and I don't care about listener numbers. So I could do a 2-hour episode on begonias that 7 people watch, but it's the best, most informational thing for those 7 people. And I'm like, I don't care, man. Like that's what podcasts are about, you know?
Yeah. I think I'd love you to, a good mate of mine, Jason Jarrett. So he's architecture by nature up in Kingscliff, New South Wales. So anyone listening that's ever seen a red pot that's come from his nursery, and a lot of people may even buy his stock and put it in a black pot and on-sell it. But he's essentially, the cacti and architectural plant guy of that is everywhere. His stuff is everywhere. He's, I don't think he would do it, but his story is he's on the same property that his dad used to have a nursery in. The house that he lived in with a nursery around it, his dad still gives his dad a few jobs to keep things watered and stuff like that. And he's taken it from, 20 over. Well, when my wife and I got together, we took a drive up there and we saw a nursery with dragon trees. And we knew what dragon trees were because we were both trained at Botanic Gardens. But I remember driving past there and going, whoever owns this knows what they're doing, because no one grows these and no one knows these. And all of a sudden, and then that was his dad, I think, or maybe even Jace at that time. Jace is probably my age or a little bit older. And so he's turned it into what it is now, and it's phenomenal. But he is very private, and I get that. He wouldn't do the show. I've tried to get him on the show as a mate, just to tell that story of taking on your dad's nursery and what it is now. But it's tricky because he wouldn't do everything for any extra marketing and things like that, but he'd be a good chat, as well as some other nursery owners down here. I think Clint Bramson would be a good chat, South Coast Bamboo. He's been on Joel's, hell of a bloke. He's going through like we all do. He's got a phenomenal garden down not far from me, again, probably 40 minutes, but he's now gone, done with that. This is good, but I'm going to buy 40 acres out in the bush and do cool climate. And it's like, yeah, cool, you can do that because you're unmarried with no kids, you prick. But he's having fun with it, and he's one of my closest mates. But I think off the top of my head, those ones, I'll chase up Shannon to see if he's keen. Clint will be keen.
Clint I actually follow Clint, and he's actually on the list. And
cool.
I'm actually genuine with people that that there is. I think there's a list that's probably like mid-40s right now, and I don't write everybody on the list. Well, I just come up with someone, and I'm like, this, bam, bam, bam. And I just send out messages to people when, it's like, oh, I'd really like to have a conversation about that right now. Like, I wait till I'm really curious. Like, I'm like, oh, that would be a great conversation to have one day. But if I'm not in the mood for it, sometimes, it doesn't, the episode's not as good, But so there's people that have been on the list for a long time.
And I think too, like, I'll think of more as after we hang up, and even if, like, we'll stay in touch after this. Obviously, if you go, no, you got anyone good at rah, 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 like, I'll think on that as well. Like, I think there's billions of people that are worth a chat. For sure.
One of the things that I'm wanting to do more of is actually, because like these conversations that we're having right now are probably the best podcasts in terms of general listenership, and people go, yeah, they love the relatable stories and all that sort of stuff. But there's great, like, what I would call like reference podcasts as well. Like, and they are a different type of podcast where it's like, well, we just recorded one. It's not out right now, but it'll come out by the time this one comes out, where we got the basically the Pacific manager for Hunter irrigation products. So, all of Australia and all sorts of stuff on just to talk about sprinklers. Like, tell me all about sprinklers and controllers and pipes and all that sort of stuff. And it's an hour and a bit, and it's just that's what it's for, And it's not going to get the listeners that other episodes will get, but as a resource, it'll be great. So I am actually I'm thinking of doing more and more and more of those. Alongside all the other ones, not exclusively, but, really nerding down on, like, okay, here's a soil expert, and here's a hedge expert, and here's a cacti expert, and here's a rose expert, and talking about them. And then what happens is the professionals, because most of the people listening to this are contractors and professionals, and they go, while I'm working, my rose knowledge is average at best. Let me listen to someone who has a rose nursery for an hour and a half, tell me about roses, and they get to the end of it, and there's 5 things they're going to change about what they're doing, and they haven't sacrificed any time to learn it because they've been on the tools, mowing lawns, driving between jobs while I've been listening. So that's a big part of it as well. It doesn't have to be... I guess I don't have the same constraints that you do. We could have this be 3 hours if we need it to be, unedited. I think there's a lot more grace. There's way more grace for what I do than for what you do. People are a lot more forgiving for an unpolished product on this side of the content spectrum.
I agree. Well, for both reasons, for the nerdy one and for a general chat, Scotty Green Thumbs. So Dr. Green Thumbs. I spoke to him the other day. I'm like, you prick. I don't know what the algorithm is, but he's every second ad for whatever I'm on the socials. But he's really done a push in the last couple of years of just getting out there, not because he wants to be anyone. He genuinely, to the core, wants people to have information and make the right decisions and choices with plants and plant health. He treats the soils of the plants. He makes his own fertilizers. He makes his own potting mixes, specialty, whether it be orchid or cacti or just indoor plants. Makes it all himself. He used to collect the seaweed down locally to make his own seaweed like tonic. So, and I'm 46. He's younger than me. He just wants people to have the right info, and he will be a good chat. So, Dr. Green Thumbs. Awesome. It might be Dr. Green Thumbs online store, I think, on Insta, but he's your guy as well.
I just Googled it. drgreenthumbs.com.au. There'll be a contact us page through there. So.
He's got the best kind of merch. You can tell he grew up as a thrasher and a skater because some of his like shirts and names of tonics, you're like, that would make a good band shirt, or that's a thrash shirt, or it looks like this or that.
Yeah.
But he'll be good. He will be good.
Yeah, you're right about the creatives as well. I find that most people in this industry were people who they have a creative bone in them and they don't like the idea of sitting behind a laptop. And that probably sums up a lot of the people who are doing what we kind of do, even in the non-design section of the industry where it's purely maintenance work. People go, I'm not that creative. It's like, well, maybe not as creative as the designers, but the fact that you love making things look beautiful and you care about beauty and you care about, guys who making the hedges straight as possible care about design. Guys who just hack it back at it don't care about design, and they might not have the same level of design as you do, and I don't. I'm not that good at design, but there's an element of it where it's like, no, I do care about it. So,
well, you got to think about the guys that spend the extra. Like, it's probably only an extra, like, not even an hour to make a hedge perfect than just to hack it. You got to think, what else they care about? What else are they into? Because it wouldn't just be that. It wouldn't just be about straight hedge. What's their intention with everything else? What else do they give a shit about? Like, they'd be passionate people. Because there's people that, again, this Red Cow farm, their hedges are like, dude, they're like rendered walls. And that's all they do. Be like, he'd be a good chat because guarantee, like, he'd be passionate about something else. He just doesn't turn up unmotivated for 25 an hour going bang, bang, bang. They're like, no, you get them in, you pay them, and they come out like rendered green walls. But yeah, there'd still be something there for sure.
Well, the pod before this one comes out, depending if there's any editing errors, but the one that I recorded before this is a guy named Remy, who was at Stonefields for 6 years. And so he was the 2IC there. He's now gone out on his own. And like the attention to detail. I met him at the live event that we did in Melbourne with Joel and Nick and Ash. And I can't do that. And it's not that I can't physically. It's that I don't have that mindset. I don't have quite that attention to detail to have the patience for days on days on days to make these beautiful stuff. It's a special kind of little niche talent. They're amazing guys that do that sort of stuff. So yeah.
I mean, it's also a special kind of person that's willing to pay for it. Well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like that's the thing. Like the guys who, my actual real strong wheelhouse is the business side. I love making systems and business, and they're my favorite episodes when we talk about meaningful stuff. Is when people send me messages and they go, I listened to your episode on how to get your pricing right, and I changed everything, and it just made my life better. And I was undercharging. I didn't know what I was doing. I love that stuff, and I love the industry, and I love working outside, and I love making things green, and I love that kind of thing. So I'm definitely, how you talked about how Charlie is a certain type of person and Jason's a certain type of person, and there's overlap and stuff. That's what I feel like. I'm actually that's part of why I love the podcast side, is because my interests are different from that. But so the meaningful aspect of it, where was I going with that? I can't even remember. And it doesn't really even matter that much. But there's these passions and these things that we have. It's a podcast.
Yeah, and I'm here for it. That's where, like, I can't relate to the people with the NASA tent, in a warehouse just to grow a fucking spathiphyllum. But I can tap into their passion.
You're doing something wrong if you've got a grow spathiphyllum they can handle it. You know what I mean? Like,
they should be on the list of non-killables almost.
Yeah, they drew it. I love how the time lapses of somebody who, they're drooping, they're not looking so good. At least you just water them, you turn around and come back 15 minutes later, and they're good again. You're like, you've done well.
Relax. Yeah. They did fine. Those plants did fine before they were put in pots in a villa. They were fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, mate, we're close to 3 hours. Do you want to just try and make it to 3 hours, or just for the stats?
We probably could. I just got to beat Ash. So he was 3 hours, was he?
Yeah, he's about 3 hours and 1 minute or something like that. That's because we can keep going all day long. Because we could.
I've got a house full of people that, well, my son needs to go to soccer. My wife just walked up the hill because I was talking to you rather than get it from the train station. So I'm like,
How about we save the 3 hours for the next episode we do?
Yeah, let's do that
we just,
next time.
We neatly wrap this up right now. Well, thank you. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, to be better than Ash, not a very high bar. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? We had to get 3 hours long just to find some bit of useful information in that podcast. I was searching for that long, and then once it happened, I was like, now I finally can wrap this up. That's what that was like.
Stone. Oh, I got a good story. Right, let's No, he's a good dude. He's a good dude. If he makes it this far, he'll get a giggle.
Joel will make it this far. Joel
will.
And he will message Ash. In fact, I threw Ash and Joel and stuff under the bus about an hour and 40 minutes into the podcast, and somebody found it and sent it to them.
Yeah.
But your Instagram handle, do you even want people to follow you? I don't know.
For sure. Just Grahame.Rowe. Grahame with an E, Rowe with an E.
Yes. Grahame Rowe.
Grahame Rowe. Yeah. It's French. It's not French.
Well, enjoy your garden tour that you're going on.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, watch my stories of myself with a good group of older plant nerds. It's going to be fun. Myself and Grahame. So here's the big reality, man. Is it's with Grahame, and he's teaching me to take over from him for this one. So that's not lost on me. So I'm psyched, man. So psyched. That's amazing. It's an amazing opportunity. Go follow everybody. As you know, I'm going to tag this Grahame, not that Grahame, but this Grahame Rowe in the Instagram, so you can grab his details anyway. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Good on you, Luke. Thank you, mate. Had a great chat. And everybody else, we will see you in the next episode. Absolutely. Thank you, mate.